Welcome, everyone. Tonight is Wednesday, April 14th. It's 7 o'clock, 7:02. And I would like to welcome you to a regular school committee meeting for the Beverly Public Schools. We are meeting in a hybrid fashion this evening using remote meeting technology that's provided at no cost to our district, and we're using captioning as well. We thank BevCam, as always, for broadcasting us tonight to allow for public access to all of the open portions of our meeting. This is allowed under the Governor's March 12th, 2020 order entitled Order Suspending Certain Provisions of Open Meeting Law, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20. This order specifically suspends the need for a quorum and the chair to be physically present and asks our body to use technical methods to allow for safe public access. We would encourage viewers to utilize the BevCam streaming options if at all possible this evening. Since tonight is a regular school committee meeting, we will have an agenda item for addressing the body during our meeting. We have a number of distinguished guests this evening, so we do not anticipate reaching this portion of our agenda until after 7:30 p.m. If you are inclined to address the body, you would need to send a request to citizenconcerns@beverlyschools.org in advance to receive a link to this meeting, and your remarks should be approximately 3 minutes or less. So joining us tonight are all of the school committee members. We are all physically present. We also have various members of the district administration and leadership teams. We are joined by a number of students, and we are also joined remotely by our local legislator, Senator Sen Lovely, and Representative Paracella. We are also joined by the superintendent of the Essex North Shore Agricultural Technical School, as well as members of her team. So without further ado, I will do a quick roll call. I know that the platform doesn't necessarily show everyone who's present, so we'll do a roll call so that we know who's with us this evening. And why don't we get started? Okay, we have Mayor Mike Cahill.
Yes.
Kimberly Coelho.
Yes.
Ken Ann McKenzie.
Yes.
Karen Robinson.
Yes.
John Mulady.
Yes.
Lorinda Visnik.
Yes.
And I am Rachel Abel. In the room, we are joined by Dr. Sue Chirocek,
Good evening.
Dr. Dorothy Flaherty,
Here.
Ms. Donna Bergeron,
Yes.
Ms. Jean Sherburne,
Here.
Ms. Bethany Splansky,
Here.
our finance director for the city, Mr. Bryant Ailes. Mr. Paul Manzo is joining us. And then Mr. Dan Keefe is also here physically. Okay. And then online, as I mentioned, we have Senator Lovely, Dr. Heidi Riccio, we have Bonnie Carr, our student representative, Jaslyn Abbott, Ms. Christina Leal from our Food Services Department, Representative Jerry Paracella, Principal Aaron Brown, and then there's just a couple duplicate for people who are in person who like to watch along on their computer screens for those school committee members. Okay. Please remember that any audio or video that you supply on this platform does become part of the meeting record, so please use your mute and unmute to prevent background noises. The chair will call on you to unmute when it's your turn to be recognized. And we are all present, so no roll call votes tonight. That's great. I think the first order of business is our Pledge of Allegiance, and if I would ask Mayor Cahill to lead us in that pledge, I'd be grateful.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. So one of our favorite activities for the school committee is to recognize our student scholars and athletes. I would invite Mr. Dan Keefe up to the podium. We have a few students who have joined us in person. We'll take a moment to recognize their achievements.
These were our student athlete all-stars from the winter, I'm trying to get it straight now, winter season, because we're in the fall 2 season right now. And we have a few people walking in, so I'll wait till them, till they get, wait for them to get to their seats. And We'll start with swimming. We have Andre Crute, Meredith Luther, Ryan McFadden. And we're going to move on to basketball because now they're seated. We'll go with Tristan Abreu, Gabe Copeland,
Come on
and
up.
Gabe was also a Boston Herald All-Scholastic this year. Congratulations. And for basketball also, we had Nick Braganca. And Nick was also an All-Star and a Boston Globe and Herald All-Star in soccer, so this is 2-season All-Star for him now. And then moving on to gymnastics, we had Sydney Spencer, Gabby Churko, congratulations, nice job. And again, the last time I was here, I spoke about gymnastics at the last meeting. Gymnastics was really one of the sports this winter that flew under the radar because they were really kind of out of sight, out of mind, because we weren't allowed to have any coverage at the Y. And I tell you, they did a great job this winter. They competed at a top level. Julie Shimana is our coach, who does a great job with them. And it was very unfortunate because they didn't get a lot of publicity, them and the swim team. But they did a great job this winter. And then for girls hockey, we have Emily Knott, Jamie DuPont, and moving on to girls basketball, Kylie McCarthy, Sydney Anderson, and we have boys hockey. We have Jackson Thomas, and now Matt, you know I was going to make you come up last, and Matt Meza. Nice job, Matt. And again, it was very difficult for them this winter. It really was. And we have a lot of these student athletes who are also participating in spring sports. We're finishing up the fall 2 season right now, which will end on technically the 25th, and then the spring season will start the 26th. So really, if you get a chance to compliment these kids, because they did a great job all through this very difficult year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keefe, and thank you all for being here this evening. Usually, we would take a short recess and be able to mingle, but obviously with social distancing, we understand if you have homework. I know it's probably a very busy time of year for you. You're welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting, or if you'd like, you may find your way out. We do have our state legislators coming up next. And I thank those school committee members who had questions that we had sent in advance. I'm not sure if this is a good time to start with Senator Lovely. We welcome you to the school committee this evening. Thank you so much for being here. And Representative Paracella, thank you also for making time in your busy schedules to be here with us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here. And I want to say congratulations to all the student athletes. It's really wonderful, given such a difficult year, that everyone's been able to play and to succeed. So congrats to everybody. And I don't know if you want to start with questions or you just want us to launch in. How would you like to do this?
Why don't you give us an overview of what's going on at the State House or in your Zoom rooms, depending on what you guys are up to these days.
Not sure if I've got a gap here. Can everybody hear me? You can. Okay. So why don't I just kind of launch in with we had received some questions in advance, and I'll just kind of go through some of them. I'm going to talk kind of in a broad sense, and in speaking with my wonderful counterpart, Representative Paracella, he's going to discuss particularly the House budget, which was released today. So a couple of questions that came in were with regard to the rainy day fund, how much of the fund was withdrawn from, and what is remaining in the fund. So Our high for the rainy day fund was at about $3.5 billion at the start of FY21. And we withdrew about $1 billion. The governor withdrew with the legislature's approval about $1 billion to be able to put that towards gap funding for our budget. And we have a balance of about $2.5 billion currently in the rainy day fund. And what does that mean for projections in the coming year? So Governor Baker, the Baker administration released their budget called House One back at the end of January as required by law. And in House One, the Governor Baker has proposed another withdrawal from the rainy day fund for about $1.6 billion. However, we've received two very good pieces of good news since Governor Baker has released his budget. First is we know that the federal government approved a major fiscal recovery package, the American Rescue Plan. The Commonwealth will receive about $4.55 billion from Washington. And so that's very good news for the state. Municipalities will also be receiving funding as well. Second, state tax collections are exceeding projections. That's a very good news coming out of a self-induced recession. So we are seeing the economy start to come back, and again, tax revenues follow as people are out spending money, and we are able to collect tax revenue. So the math adds up nicely for Massachusetts with about $6 billion in unanticipated funds, a major amount in the context of a $45.6 billion budget that we are looking at currently. So that leads me to believe that the worst case scenario that we withdraw the governor's $1.6 billion request from the rainy day fund may not realize. We may not have to withdraw that much, and so it remains to be seen. And I know that Senate President Spilka favors regrowing the rainy day fund to get it back up to our at least $3.5 billion and growing. That impacts our bond rating and our ability to borrow. So we do want to have a healthy rainy day fund. So we will see what that means in terms of what the House budget looks like. Again, Representative Parasol will talk about that. And the Senate budget, we don't take that up until the third week in May, but that is being put together right now. And so we'll have more information as we go into that part as well. With regard to Chapter 70, just quickly, there's going to be a record $5.503 billion. It's an increase of almost $220 million over FY21. And we will fully fund 1/6 of the Student Opportunity Act. As you will recall, for this fiscal year that we're currently in, we were not able to fund the Student Opportunity Act, but we did hold Chapter 70 harmless and level funded. We will be able to make that promise and fully fund the Student Opportunity Act for the coming fiscal year. Unrestricted general government aid will receive about $1.16 billion. It's an increase of almost $40 million over FY21. And that will provide additional local aid to support Beverly and other communities. One of the questions was what parts of the state economy have overperformed expectations, what have underperformed. So we know that in many ways the rich have gotten richer and the poor have gotten poorer. We know well-paid workers in finance, insurance, in the corporate world have easily adjusted to working remotely. That's a good thing. But those who cannot, that have not been able to do that, those who are frontline workers, hospitality and leisure, for example, they have struggled. Restaurant personnel, they have struggled. But we do see hope, hope in both those sectors as more people get vaccinated, more people will travel, more people will be able to go out with some confidence. And so that's what we are looking at going forward. That will help both the Commonwealth and the North Shore specifically. And so one question was on the millionaires tax. So the Fair Share Amendment, the millionaires tax, passed the legislature in 2019, and it needs to pass one more time to go to the ballot. A December poll showed that more than 70% of voters support this measure. New York just passed a similar measure last week. And so all the signs suggest that the Commonwealth will enact a similar provision. And so we talked about the Student Opportunity Act. Will it be funded? Yes, it will be. That is the promise coming out of the governor. The House and the Senate will likely, I can say, 100% follow. Absolutely. And I just wanted to touch on just some legislation that I have personally filed that impacts school systems. And then I'm going to turn it over to my wonderful counterpart. But 3 bills that I have filed this session that affect schools. One of them is prevention of child sexual abuse, which is my top legislative priority. So I filed SD 2260, an act relative to enhancing hiring practices to prevent sexual abuse. It requires schools to request information from prior employers regarding allegations of sexual misconduct as part of their hiring practices. We think this will give the protections to the school side when hiring, so we don't, quote, pass the trash, which is when someone accused of sexual misconduct is just moved along and goes to another school system and repeats that behavior. We want to stop that. Another bill that I filed this session, SD 2083, an act ensuring safe drinking water in schools. Ensure that Massachusetts students can access drinking water in schools that meets the federal safety level of lead concentration in drinking water of less than 1 part per billion. There has been an extensive study across the Commonwealth of which schools may still have lead pipes or lead service that comes into the school system. And I'm working on this with Representative Ehrlich from Marblehead to come up with the funding stream so that school systems and districts are held harmless. And the third bill is, as we know, we have a mental health crisis in our country. I'm talking to you as educators and school committee members. You can see this in our schools, in our students. And I filed SD 2215, an act relative to establishing a model school policy on suicide prevention. It would require, subject to appropriation, that schools develop policies on suicide prevention that address issues facing the LGBTQ community in particular. So those are the 3 bills that that I'll be working with and presenting to you in more detail later in the session. And I'm happy to stop there and turn it over to my really great counterpart, Representative Parasella. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Senator Lovely, and thanks for all you do for our community. Thanks very much to the school committee members. I really appreciate your service to Beverly. You do a great job, and we really appreciate that. And also just want to extend my congratulations to those student athletes as well. It was a challenging year, and they came through and did a great job. So congratulations to them. So as Senator Lovely mentioned, the House budget just came out today, so it's hot off the press. So I thought I would just kind of give a few highlights about that. I apologize for throwing out a lot of numbers, but hopefully it'll give you a sense of where we are right now. So the way it works is the governor puts out his budget, then we do our budget. We'll be voting on it the week after next. We have to file all our amendments this week. And so after school vacation is next week, and then we'll be voting on the budget the week after that, and then it'll go to the Senate. They'll vote on it, and then we'll come to an agreement and have the governor sign it, hopefully in time for July 1st when the fiscal year starts. But with the House budget, it's about $1 billion more than last year, which is good news because initially we thought there might be like $1 billion cut. But as Senator Lovely said, the revenues are coming in better than anticipated. But also a good portion of that increase is mass health costs. A lot more folks ended up on mass health when they lost their jobs. So mass health is the state health insurance program. So we covered those folks. The good news is a decent chunk of that will get reimbursed by the federal government. So it'll help cover some of those increased costs. But the tax revenues have been better than anticipated, which is great. We weren't quite sure how it was all going to play out. And also getting that additional money from the federal government is going to make a big difference for us. The Chapter 70 money, it is $5.5 billion. So for Beverly, if this all stays as it is currently, and I believe it will, as far as the Chapter 70 goes, Beverly will get about 10.6 million this year, about 450,000 more than last year. And just to put it in perspective, 5 years ago, Beverly got about $7.7 million. So in 5 years, it's gone up, almost $3 million. And for the unrestricted local aid, that's going to be about $6.4 million to Beverly. That funds our parks, our police, our fire department, things like that. And a couple other highlights. As you know, a lot of folks are facing eviction because of the pandemic. So we're giving $39 million for legal assistance to help folks who are facing eviction. That's a huge increase. That's $6 million increase over last year. Some of the other school-related matters, for example, the special education circuit breaker, that's going to be about $367 million. So that should allow the communities to get that 75% reimbursement that they're looking for. And a new program that's going to be funded this year is $15 million in grants that the Secretary of Education will have oversight over for communities to provide summer education. We know there's been some learning loss. So Beverly and other communities can, when that program gets running, you can apply for grants for summer education programs, and also be a mental health component to that to support the mental health concerns of students. We know that's been an issue. Early education, as you all know, is very important. So we're doing a $20 million increase to provide reimbursement increases to those that provide early education. They feel like they need a better reimbursement rate. We're going to try to help them with that. They've had a lot of expenses with PPE and things like that. So that's going to give you a $20 million increase. The labor and economic development portion of this, I'll just touch on this real quick. There's going to be $50 million for adult education. A lot of the folks that lost their jobs in like the hospitality sector, retail sector, we're going to try to provide training for them. And I see Superintendent Riccio is on the call, and Essex Tech has stepped up big time to help with their facilities and allowing adult education and retraining at that beautiful school. And they've received some grant money. So we're trying to get similar technical schools across the state to provide those services. So there'll be money in the budget for that. And also for some like green jobs, like $10 million for wind energy. As I mentioned, like Mass Health, the spending has gone up over $1 billion from last year. So that's a big part of the budget. A couple other highlights: emergency food assistance, with the pandemic. Before the pandemic started, Massachusetts unemployment rate was 2.9%. That was in February of 2020. And within a couple of months, it was about 17%, just a huge, huge jump. So places like Beverly Bootstraps and others, just had an incredible amount of people come seeking their assistance. So we're going to provide $10 million for an increase in emergency food assistance for folks who could use that, and rental assistance to try to help people make up for their rent that they couldn't pay. The federal government's going to give Massachusetts $800 million. So we had $22 million in the budget. So it's going to be a huge amount, $822 million to help with rental assistance. So that should hopefully keep folks in their homes. That's really, really important. And as I mentioned, the Mass Legal Assistance Corporation will get a $6 million increase because they do provide a lot of services for folks who are facing eviction. They help with their unemployment claims, Social Security, things like that. So we felt that was important to fund that. And for all of us trying to save to send our kids to college, we had a 2-year pilot program to make like 529 contributions in those college savings programs. We're going to make that permanent. So for individuals, you'll get a $1,000 tax deduction for saving money for college, and married couples will get $2,000. So we decided that that was an important initiative, so we're going to make that permanent. So those are some of the highlights of the budget that we have. I'll be trying to file a couple of amendments specifically for Beverly. I know, for example, with the new police station, they're going to combine the dispatch with the police and the fire, and they're looking for some money to help upgrade the communications equipment. So I'm going to file an amendment regarding that. And specific legislation. So I'm chairing the Economic Development Committee this session. And one of the hot topics in that committee is sports gaming. And I've had a lot of meetings about sports gaming in the last couple of weeks. I'm learning a lot about it. But we're surrounded by states that provide sports betting. New Hampshire, Rhode Island, New York has just approved mobile sports betting. So it's estimated that with the licensing fees, we could probably get about $60, $70 million, and then probably another $60 million, $70 million in annual revenue. So I think it's probably going to happen this session to legalize sports gaming. So that's what I've been working on a lot in this early part of the session. So I'm happy to take any questions, and I'm really happy that I have Senator Lovely as a colleague. She's great. Thank you.
Thank you both. I'm looking around the room to see if any of our committee members, I see Mayor Cahill has a question.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, it's good to see and hear you both. Thank you very much. And this may be premature to ask, but certainly with all of the mass lottery revenues coming back as unrestricted general government aid, or that being the source for that, what are the thoughts about how resources would flow from that gaming legislation?
Mr. Parasella, were you able to hear that question?
Can you hear me?
Now I can.
Oh, okay. Hello. Thank
Hi.
you so much for that. So to start off, on March 10th, there was course selections. Going into March 15th, there was a Pi Day celebration by the math and science teams.
Just a second,
On March
Jaslyn.
22nd, it was World Water Day, so students gave out free water bottles, and there was a bulletin board. Also on March 22nd, seniors returned every day,
Sorry.
and on March 29th, the 2/3 schedule was introduced. Also on March 29th, there was a World Theater Day trivia competition, and there was trivia around VHS. April 1st was World Autism Day, Human Rights Club, and the heart pins are located at the 4th floor office. April 1st was the NHS induction. April 2nd, there was no school because it was Good Friday. April 9th was the end of quarter 3. April 12th, the 4th quarter began. Also on April 12th, it's the start of Senior Spirit Week, and there's different theme days, and today was Movie and TV Show Day. Report cards were posted on April 16th. A couple of upcoming events. So tonight, April 14th, is Senior Night, so from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Senior Night will be held at VHS, and there will be ice cream and games. April vacation begins the 17th through the 25th, and classes will resume on Monday, April 26th. Also on April 26th, the REACH internships and projects will begin for seniors, and April 27th, VHS grade 11 SAT essay will be held. That's all I have for today, but thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Jaslyn. And thank you, Representative Parasella. The mayor was trying to ask a question.
I think I'll wait and ask that another time. I don't
Ask
think
another
it's-
time,
It's a bit
okay.
tangential to tonight. Thanks.
Okay. Were there any other questions? Ms. Visnik has a question.
Do we think did we think they can hear us?
Representative Parasella, can you hear us all right? I'm not thinking they're hearing us. Okay, we're going to try again. BevCam is saying that maybe you can hear us now. Okay, there we go. I got some thumbs up again. So Representative Parasella, the mayor is going to connect with you offline about some questions that he has about unrestricted local aid. And I think we had one question for Ms. Visnik, if we could.
Fantastic,
works.
thank you. I'm wondering, relative to the budget, Senator Lovely, I believe you've been here in Beverly working on the variant issue. I apologize, Mr. Paracella, if you've been here too. I only heard about Miss Lovely's involvement. If we're going to have some state help for that cleanup, is that somewhere in this budget? Is there like an emergency fund? Where do we sit with that?
So, particular to the variant project, there isn't an earmark within this budget for the variant project. We're still working with the DEP on what that looks like, and also Varian would be responsible for the payment of that cleanup as the owner of the property. They're responsible for that. So there would be state funds for, they've been doing some testing. DEP's been out there to test not only the variant property, but many of the off-site properties, homes, residential homes, the field behind Shore Country Day, the stream that runs behind, there's been testing there. There may be reimbursement for that from Varian, but Varian is the responsible party who would be paying for that cleanup.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you both for visiting with us this evening. We really appreciate your time and the preparation to pass along all that information. We are headed into our budget season. We have a long slate on our agenda this evening. You're welcome to stay with us. As I gave the students permission, you're also welcome to log off and attend to your other matters. We so appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Much appreciated.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Dr. Chirocek, I know that you have been in touch with Superintendent Dr. Riccio, and I don't know if you had some slides to share.
Yes, I do. I have some slides that she forwarded me, and I believe that Bonnie Carr is also here with her. So I'm going to turn it over to both of you, and I will put up the slides for
We
you right now.
affectionately call her Vanna sometimes.
I know.
She'll run the slides.
When I
Thank
do it
you.
well, that's when it works.
Okay.
All
Welcome
right.
both, and thank you again for joining us tonight.
Sure. So welcome and thank you for having us. We're excited to partner again with Beverly Public Schools regarding the CTE After Dark partnerships that, like State Rep and Senator responded, is that the governor has been extremely helpful with funding some of this, particularly the startup costs as it relates to some of these creative partnerships. I will hand this presentation over to Bonnie, and then I did receive from Superintendent the questions that were asked of us, and I'm happy to respond to those after this formal presentation. And then if there are underlying questions that have not been answered, certainly we can discuss those as well. So Bonnie Carr is our Director of Workforce Development and Partnerships. And so Bonnie, take it away.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for having us here today. So as Heidi had mentioned earlier, and it also came up in some of the conversations we heard from Senator Lovely, the governor's office is very dedicated to creating a viable workforce. And what that means is that we have strong labor markets here in the northeast part of the state. And we have 3 areas of filling those labor markets by training programs. The first one that everybody really knows about is the enrollment that when we have fully enrolled students at Essex Tech. So we have many students from Beverly and all of our sending districts that are enrolled here as our own students. 2 of the new initiatives that have come through the governor's office are the CTE Partnership After Dark students, and many of your students are participating in this program right now. Beverly has 21 students who come to Essex Tech halfway through the day, and they have vocational career tech training, in areas of interest to them, but also areas that have strong labor market ties as well. And then the third shift is the adult education program that I think had been mentioned earlier as well, that we have for people that have graduated from high school that are looking for potential job training. So the next slide, please. So currently we have partnering communities from within the district that you're all familiar with. We have 2 gateway cities that partner in this program, Salem and Peabody, Gloucester. And this year was the first year that Beverly joined the partnership program, and Swampscott will be joining the program in 21-22. Some of the programs, as I mentioned earlier, have a very strong workforce base, and it also has to do with what our current student enrollment is. We are working on expanding these programs to be able to handle more students, because a lot of students are interested in coming to have vocational training. And so what they do is they have their academic classes at your school, at Beverly High School in the morning, and then they come here in the afternoon, as I said earlier, and they can kind of major. They pick a career tech program that they are interested in that has a good labor market tie. So some of the programs that the students are enrolled in now throughout this program is advanced manufacturing, auto collision repair, construction craft labor, design and visual communication. As an agricultural school, we offer always sustainable horticulture. And for the upcoming school year, because of the large labor market demands that are in the construction industry in particular, we are adding electrical and plumbing, and we're also adding auto technology, because right now the state has identified the fact that there are auto technicians in need, and there are high-level auto tech positions that students can go into when they graduate from the program. So the students come every day. So they have Monday through Friday. Essex Tech has a bus that picks the students up at their sending district high schools at 11 o'clock, and they arrive on campus at 11:30. They do have lunch here, and then they go to their shop or their CTE program, and they spend about 3 hours in there getting the education in the vocational programs until it's scheduled release time. So we have some important dates. We usually have the parents and the families come once it's been determined that the students are going to be participating as students in the After Dark partnership program. Currently, our partnership liaison has been working with your district to recruit and provide information to the students and their families, and working with your Beverly liaison as well. Once it's determined what students are going to be participating, they will come to Essex Tech for a family presentation in August, and they can hear more about the program, what their schedule will be. They'll have an opportunity to go into the technical programs and meet the teachers. The teachers will do demonstrations and presentations so that the students can really get a good feel for what they're going to be doing in the program. And the parents have an opportunity to ask even more questions at that point. One of the opportunities that we do have for students in vocational programs throughout the state are the opportunity to earn articulated credits through our local community college. So when your students are in the partnership program here at Essex Tech, they too also can earn these college credits just for going through the program. So the programs have been aligned with pathways at a lot of the different community college, ours being North Shore Community College, where the students can graduate from Beverly High and Essex Tech as a partnership student and have 9 credits towards their career pathway. So 2 examples of a career pathway are shown here. For an engineering technology degree, they'll have 9 articulated credits in those classes that are listed. And the construction and building science degree, they will also have 9 credits towards an associate's degree in construction management when they graduate. For the upcoming school year, we are in the process of establishing articulation agreements with North Shore Community College to extend for business pathways for DMC and sustainable horticulture as well.
That's the end, right?
So does anybody have any questions about that program?
I see Mayor Cahill has a question. Go ahead, Mayor Cahill.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you so much for the presentation. And if what I'm asking gets too technical and you need to punt a bit, because I can't imagine you've got the expertise in every area. Maybe you do, but I don't want to be unfair. I do want to ask, I talked with Dr. Riccio recently and asked some questions about HVAC. And I remember being told that HVAC didn't kind of stand alone, but it fits under other areas. So that was interesting. And any kind of sharing on that, but also the construction and building science degree as an area. There is the one course that you showed on that slide for an introduction to sustainable design. And just want to, recognizing that as we work towards cutting greenhouse gas emissions in the building sector, it seems there's a lot there, building envelope, materials, systems, and beyond. So just wondering, when I looked at the other courses, they seemed that the more the building code evolves and the more efficiencies are built in and so forth, that it's going to just permeate every course. Could you just share a thought on that?
I can actually answer that. So what I have shared with you right now, Mayor and committee, is the document that relates to the questions that were asked. And I think that kind of definitely relates to this question regarding the climate and the sustainable components. As you know, or as we discussed, we are working with Jim Bauer from Clean Energy and Light, who actually has also, I believe, assisted Beverly in some of the clean energy work. And so this link here on this page, and this is accessible to all of you, so you will have access to this. These are live links that takes you directly to our draft sustainable curriculum that we are working on. Again, it's a working draft. And so as new techniques come into play, certainly so does sustainable curriculum. The articulated credit that the students get at the community college level is based on our scope and sequence, as well as our curriculum maps and course syllabi. So those are all submitted. And just by being a part of the Chapter 74 program, they do receive that articulated credit. Our building is a net zero building. So certainly there are a lot of opportunities on our campus for students to be exposed to a variety of different sources, particularly as it relates to HVAC systems. In fact, when you come for a tour, because I know it seems as though many of you would like a tour, so we would love to give anyone a tour that would like to come. We can do it in groups or pairs, when kids are in session, when kids aren't in session. I will say that when when Cara Martag was the superintendent, Mayor Betancourt from Peabody came out to see the After Dark kids in action, and they were excited to be able to see really the kids working. So we're happy to give you all a tour to do that. But with that, our students in HVAC actually assist with some of the HVAC systems. We have an HVAC technician that's on site, including our HVAC teachers. So they do installs across our building. They also look at filter replacement, et cetera, and preventative maintenance. So having that net zero building, I think, is also helpful for students to understand the importance of sustainability and renewable energy sources. And we're continuing to work on that. But that document there pretty much articulates the different sustainable components that we have. And much like as technology advances and grows, we are expected as a school system to do the same. So that's what we do in vocational education. It's important to be that state of the art, current, and even foreseeing into the future, which is why we have program advisory committees. And those program advisory committees are required by law. And we have members from business and industry that are current in the trends. Much like a teacher has to get relicensed, every 5 years and has to accumulate X number of hours of professional development, so too are vocational teachers. So our vocational teachers have to maintain their professional license in the trade area, but also on the teaching side. and that has to be professional development related to new techniques. So I hope I answered that
And Heidi, just so
for
that,
you.
just so that you know, I handed out a hard copy to everyone here tonight of the questions, but I will share that digitally, so you'll have the live links. I'll have
Great.
Donna, we'll send that out tomorrow.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Mayor, did that answer the question?
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. And I know we talked before about getting our sustainability director and some folks out this summer as well, in addition to any kind of tours that we want to do. So that's fantastic. Thanks.
Absolutely. We're very excited to work with our partner schools, particularly Beverly. You've been wonderful to work with as it relates to bringing on more students, being creative thinkers, and how we can make this work for the kids. So we appreciate that and we thank you.
Dr. Riccio, I think we have Ms. Lorinda Visnik with a question. She has her hand up here.
Great.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure, maybe the question is for this superintendent or this superintendent.
Well, we're both here, so that works.
Fantastic. It's a great day. In general, somebody spoke to how many children we have in the After Dark program. I didn't include in my list of questions, and I really thank you for answering them all, because I did send you a whole bunch, and I somewhat apologize about that. How many quote unquote regular seats do we have, right? So there's 3 programs, the day program, the After Dark, and then the adult education. So how many quote unquote seats does Beverly have in the day program? And then a follow-up question to that is, perhaps for you, Dr. Trocheck, how many of our children apply compared to how many seats we have?
Okay.
And then the last little piece of it, and is have we, especially with Dr. Morgan's help, have we analyzed who's applying and who's getting in relative to whether there's any bias there?
So Heidi, do you want to start?
Yeah, I can definitely respond to that. So we have, not including the not including the partnership students, we currently have 114 students enrolled in our regular day programs. Sue and I have had great conversations about how do we get more kids, from Beverly in. So we have been, as part of not only a statewide initiative, but also within our school system, is we have been looking at admissions data for the last good 3 years, if not longer, but really digging deeper into the data for about 3 years now. We have actually seen our diversity grow, interestingly enough. And when we compare ourselves to many of our sending communities, as you know, we have 17 sending communities, and we also service another 38 other communities. And you can actually look at, we sent out and we made public and did a public release what we call an admissions dashboard. So that dashboard is an interactive dashboard, and I will actually share it as a link with the superintendent so that you can look at admissions data from Beverly, you can look at admissions data from Peabody, and you can actually compare the data. You can also look at how many students of color or students that are maybe have an individualized education plan or a 504 have been accepted. And so that is an interactive data dashboard that we have. It also sits on our website. So we obviously want transparency, for lack of a better word. I know that word is somewhat overused, but we do want people to really be looking at the data and look at how we do. We do not have caps on who we take in to our school. We do have an approved admissions policy following the state regulations and guidance. And there will be new guidance coming out from the state. There's a Board of Education meeting on the 21st. However, if you were to look at the admissions data, we are really working on, do students that not get in understand the appeal process? And so when we actually ran the data pool, the kids, EL students, for example, actually got in at a higher rate, but they didn't take the seat. And so it's really important to say, well, why didn't they take the seat? And to kind of dig deeper into that. So depending on the community we are working with, looking at that data to dig a little bit deeper to say, is it because you need to get your younger siblings off the bus because your parents are working? What are the reasons that they're choosing not to come to us? And so we are looking at that data. I know that there's a lot of talk about lottery, but you have to consider that the lottery does not solve the wait list concern or the wait list problem. So it's really about the number of seats that are at the school, or not only at the school, but also other innovation pathways I know Beverly is working on. And we're happy to help Beverly in any way that we can as it relates to the innovation pathways. But there is no quota system in place at this point. Paul Manzo, I think, who is there this evening, he has been a great help as a new member of our school committee representing Beverly, and he sits on our admissions. We have an admissions subcommittee doing that, looking at the data. And we have only met twice, so it really definitely is a process, but it's something that we are looking at for sure. But the interactive data dashboard will definitely give you the information that you're looking for.
And so I like that you asked the question the way you did, because I think there are two sides to the admission process, right? There's the end at Essex Tech where they are doing admissions process and they have their criteria for admissions. But there's, we believe that in Beverly, the area that we're working on and looking at is, falls more under sort of some of the conversation that we've been having and will continue to have around the advanced coursework and how we are establishing rigor and expectations from all grade levels 7 through 12, right? So thinking about what work needs to be done on that end, and also within the guidance area, how are we advising and talking with students when they're in 7th and 8th grade as they're making a decision as to whether or not to apply. So both of those things are going to impact the proportion or diversity within the students that do go from Beverly. So those are the areas that we're looking at from our end.
Follow up.
Sure, Ms. Visnik.
So approximately how many Beverly students applied and did not get in?
So I'm going to give you an approximate because I don't have the actual number, but I believe that there's about 150 applicants probably that apply and 27 or 28 get in. Heidi, does that sound right?
We have 114. So I'm actually looking,
Okay.
If you look at this data point here.
She found the dashboard. That's helpful.
Yep. So I'm actually on the dashboard right
Yeah.
now. So you can disaggregate the data between the town or the community, whether they're an agricultural student, because we do have approximately 350 to 400 agricultural students. So this is your application data here. And on the left-hand side, it talks about whether it's a student with disabilities, a 504, and an English learner. So if I look at Beverly, for example, right, they had 116 applicants. And then let's see if I can dig into deeper. Sorry, I'm just trying to get rid of. So if you were to just kind of remove all of this, all these checkoff boxes, you'd actually have the incoming data for those towns if it loads properly. But Sue is correct. It is approximately that. And I don't know that that's too inconsistent with other communities. We have Peabody is our largest sending community with 300 students enrolled, but they also have, for example, this school year alone, Peabody had 200 students apply to the school. So, there may be one, Beverly is one of our top 5. As you can see, you have Peabody, Danvers, Beverly, Salem, and Gloucester. Those are our top 5 communities. So what we are working on in this subcommittee is looking at the data, like you said, with Beverly, how many kids are not getting in, and then let's look a little bit deeper. I will say there is some data that you just can't see, and I'm going to tell you why, is that we accept 450 students. However, historically, out of that first round of 450 students, 100 of them decide not to come to Essex Tech, right? So then that drops it down to 350. Then we take 100 kids off that wait list. And then on top of that, if a student doesn't gain acceptance, there is an appeal process that they can do through the superintendent and principal's office. And that is where we really dig a little bit deeper into, what were the results of why the student didn't get in? And we look at everything. We meet with the families, or the family as well as the student, and kind of discuss the application. And then they can always reapply in their incoming sophomore year. And actually, they can also reapply up to grade 11. So I will share this dashboard just so that you all have it. I'll share it with Sue as well this evening. And then that way you'll have it. And again, it's an interactive dashboard. So you can change the data around. You can isolate the data. You can just look at Beverly, or you can look at the top 5 communities, or you can look at all of the communities.
Great. I think we have one more follow-up from Ms. Visnik.
Thank you. Yes, so in the ballpark, approximately 116 applied and about 26 or 28 got in. Thank you, Kim. I'm sorry, my microphone wasn't on. Okay, so 116 applied from Beverly. Approximately 26 or 28 got in. We'll round that down to 25 for easy math. And so that would be the incoming freshmen. And so we think approximately 25 in each grade level. So we have approximately 100 students at INSAT right now.
You have a 114.
Okay, and so now I'm looking at Jean, my queen of the beans. And so does the amount of money that we pay go by how many seats we're taking?
So
Yes. So you get assessed whatever the state comes out with Chapter 70, and obviously they have a formula. And then when we create our budget, we look at those funds, and then from there, we look at the revenue that we're going to be taking in, and it offsets the assessments. And so your assessment is based on the student population from the year before. So much like your school system budget, your kids count, basically they're 1 year out, if that makes sense. Because you go off of October, your budget and the funds that you get are based on October 1 enrollment that you submit to the state the year prior to the school year of that budget round.
Okay.
I was really asking that, I'm sorry, because if as I read through here and you're expanding and you're building more, if we send more children, right, then, which we would love because we have a wait list, right?
Yeah.
Then we have to, absolutely compute that into, and the rest of our meeting is going to be talking about the budget. So.
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, exactly. So the more students you have, right, you pay that per pupil rate. I will say, if you were to look at our budget, and I don't know, we did mail these budget books out. I don't know if you have them or not, but they are also on our website. And I know that Mayor Cahill has them. But if you were to look at, just for example, the budget and what the draft, because obviously nothing's set until the governor kind of signs the deal as it relates to his state budget. But there is a great budget page here, okay? And on this, in this document, and if you don't have it, I can definitely share it with you. But for example, Beverly, even though we have 114 students now, you are actually going to be billed on 113 because as of October 1, we had 113. So we actually took in a student that was on the wait list after October 1, okay, for example. And so you represent 9.3%, Beverly represents 9.3% of the overall enrollment at Essex Tech, okay? Your per pupil cost for next year is estimated at $16,801. That is less than a 0.5% increase over last year. So whatever we billed you last year, the cost per pupil is under 1% increase, if that makes sense. We are, and we kind of pride ourselves because of the grants that we take in and the revenues that we take in, but we are one of the most affordable vocational schools in the Commonwealth. There are only 4 other school districts in the Commonwealth that are less than us on school expenditure. But if you were to look at, for example, what it cost, and we all know it costs more to educate a vocational student. So at Essex North Shore, it cost us $19,744 to educate kids based on 2019 rate, right? But we only charge Beverly the $16,719. And that's because of the revenues that we take in, and the grants that we take in.
Thank you so much for that detailed explanation. I think we have one more question from our school committee person, Kimberly Coelho.
Thanks. So regarding the admissions process, are there a certain amount of seat spots that are held for consideration for students that have IEPs? And is that process different from the students that are trying to apply for the After Dark program versus a regular school year?
So that's a great question because a lot of people are confused by that. In our application process, we can ask them as it's optional. They do not have to disclose. So we have what we call blind admissions. So often we do not know if the student is a person of color, an EL, a student with disabilities, a student on a 504. It is against the civil rights law to ask for that information during that application process. So we do not know until they come to us. We are fairly consistent with our special education population is about 18%. We also have about another 8% who receive 504 services, which is really indicative of a high school student because the goal of special education is to actually reduce the services over time in preparation for that student. When they leave us, they are ready because it's really important that we're preparing them for that future workforce or for college because although they have that right for modifications or accommodations by law and by civil rights, there isn't going to be somebody, possibly standing next to them as an instructional assistant on the job site. So our IEP population, it's about 25, between IEPs and 504s is about 25%. The kids, we have seen actually this year alone, which I'm sure Beverly is facing this as well, we have had 30 additional this year since kids have never been on an IEP before. And as high school students, we have had 30 additional consults for special education services. Some of it is that social emotional learning, which can certainly be a challenge as a result of COVID and all that is happening. However, we do see an increase also in students either on the spectrum or with autism. And we are actually creating a special young adult program for students with autism. It's called Uniquely Abled, and we're very excited to work with our local workforce and labor development. And that autism program is specific to young adults with autism to train them for the workforce in advanced manufacturing. The partnership program that we work with, when we wrote the grant, we did write it to target students with disabilities as well as students in low socioeconomic and students who were considered EL. And that was written right into the grant because clearly we want to change the pathway for students that may not have had access previously.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I think we have maybe one final question from school committee person Karen Robinson.
Thank you so much. So I was just curious, of our After Dark students, or even just After Dark students in general, were those typically students who applied and did not get in originally, or did they just decide that they were interested later on? I don't know if you have that information.
Sure. We do, and that's one of the things that we talked about is we wanted to target those students that did not get in, but also students that may not have thought to apply to us. Maybe they didn't even live in Beverly at the time, in the 8th grade, and then they came into Beverly, or maybe they just never thought of vocational education. So it's definitely a combination of. We actually do have 2 DMC students who videotaped me for a episode of our Hawk Highlight, which is a staff member of the month. And I was talking to these 2 ladies, and both of them applied. They're best friends, they're neighbors. Both of them applied, didn't get in. And they said when they saw that Beverly was offering this, they jumped at the chance and they applied immediately for design and visual. And then they said, well, the letter had gotten mailed. It was in their mailbox, and they were so nervous to open it because they're like, I don't think we're going to get into this After Dark program. And they're like, we got in. And so, there's definitely some success stories. And I know Bonnie can talk probably a little bit more, but it is extremely refreshing to see, we call them our partnership kids, but we love them. They are our kids. We really have made an effort to make sure that they have the same access to resources as our students. And actually, we had one of them, we had an auto collision student speak at the Board of Education with us back in November about the importance of education, of vocational education. And so Bonnie can probably talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So just, going back to the question about do we target students who originally applied and did not get in, we do look at the data to determine who those students were. And our partnership liaison works very closely with yours. So those are the first students that we reach out, that she reaches out to through your liaison as well. And I mean, there's stories about the students right now. Some of the students are starting to get ready for summer internships that we'll be having on campus through the First Jobs program. So we work with those students to be able to have them come on campus and get paid. And these jobs are in the works right now. The student who spoke at the State House, I mean, it was just so refreshing for us to have a student that really had so much passion about the opportunity that were being presented through the program. I mean, when it comes from the students themselves, it really always makes such a difference than to hear us talk about it all the time. So it's great when we can have them on as part of the team.
Okay, I think we probably could ask questions all evening, but I did hear the invitation for us to perhaps schedule a tour at some point, and if that's all right with the committee, we've got an action-packed agenda. Thank you so much, Dr. Riccio and Ms. Carr,
Thank you.
for joining us tonight. We really appreciate all this information. We appreciate the thought that you put into answering our questions and providing all those links. So thank you again so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it and look forward to seeing you.
Thank you.
Okay. Wow, lots of good information. Let's see, we have a couple of just housekeeping things that we'll take care of real quickly. We have the approval of our meeting records from our March 10th regular school committee meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Visnik, and a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Were there any edits or corrections that we wanted to make to that meeting record? I'm not seeing any hands, therefore, we do not need to do a roll call vote. All those in favor of approving the meeting records? We have 7-0. Thank you so much. And we thank our student representative for her report. We've reached the point of this evening, it's a little bit later than I anticipated, for our forum for citizen concerns. Ms. Bergeron, has anyone signed up?
No.
Okay, moving right along, we have items by consensus this evening. We have warrants A, B, C, D, and E as outlined in the agenda. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. McKenzie and Ms. Visnik. So these are pretty self-explanatory, so I would like we have a motion to approve items by consensus as outlined below, and the superintendent has recommended that. All those in favor? I'm counting 7-0. Okay, in terms of updates from the chair, the first item we have is our school choice. Every year we revisit this topic, and Dr. Churchick has provided us with some data and has some information to share.
All right. So this is a similar document to those, for those of you who have been here, that we supply every year. Just an update with information. It came, I think you got it in your supporting documents as well. It tells you the number of slots that were available based upon last year's vote and how many students attended, and what our current projection is for the coming year and how many seats are available. And so I think that Ms. Abel asked me a question before the beginning, just to clarify. If you take a vote this evening on a number of seats per grade, that allows us to limit school choice enrollment at that number. If you take no vote, then we're open then school choice is open, and there's no limit on, no cap on the number of seats. So what we're asking tonight is, what do you want to place as a cap for each grade level? Typically in the past, we have settled on 10 slots per grade, kindergarten through grade 8, and then 15 seats in grades 9 through 12. We currently have enrolled, you can see in column C, those are the number of students that we have enrolled at each grade level. And in, Donna, I think that I don't know what column D was. It's just the number of students that we had projected originally for that grade level and how it grew over time.
Is that a
Current students
typo with the
projected.
year?
Yeah, those are the
Yeah,
ones.
that's what we had thought, right? And then they moved down. And
Yes,
then
correct.
the
And then
number of
it's
seats that are available, that we have available in each grade level right now. Oh, so this should say 21, 22. That's the problem.
Oh.
2020, right? 21, 22. What year is it? I've been in a pandemic. I don't even know what year it is. This is the number of seats that we have available in each grade level right now, based upon the vote for 10 per seat. This is the number of requests we've already received as of April 2nd for the coming year. And this is the projected enrollment that we have for each of those grade levels in total for the grade level numbers. Remember, at the elementary school level, if a student applies for school choice, they can request a school, but that doesn't necessarily mean if we accept them as a school choice student that they would be at that school. We may assign them to a different school based upon enrollment.
And I do believe if we accept a student, we're responsible up through grade 12.
Correct.
Did I see a hand? Ms. Visnik?
So in years past, I have asked to see, I would like to see side by side what are our class sizes, so that, for instance, we say, if we vote on this and we accept however many students at whatever grade, that we would feel better about, one of two scenarios is going to happen. One, we're pretty far lower than our recommendations for class sizes, or maybe accepting some children from outside push us over, and then we open a new classroom, which is, from many people's point of view, an ideal. From our point of view of maybe opening a new classroom and the costs around that is maybe not a good idea. And then you have to consider the space. Do we have an empty classroom to do that? So, I didn't ask for that tonight. I apologize for not asking for it because I think people like to see those numbers, but can you speak to that on the fly here? Like, are we going to be close? Is it going to be okay?
So again, remember, we have the flexibility in grades K through 4 of assigning them to a building where those class size numbers are not in excess of our guidelines, right? And so through grades K through 4, that's the case. And in grades 5 through 8, we have 12 to 14 teams. And so 10 students is just one student. Again, we get the flexibility to move them around. So I don't think that they gravely impact class size in that way or cause us to add additional classrooms. The numbers at the level that we have them. What I can't exactly speak to is at the high school with with 15, because we don't know what classes they're going to try to choose or what they'll select off of the program of studies. Again, so I would not say that our school choice numbers at this level adversely cause us to ever add a full classroom or put us over a particular limit. And what we did include in here for you is the projected enrollment for the grade level. And you can just, I think that actually, school choice aside, is a pretty interesting column to look at for those of you who have been looking for years when those numbers used to hover around 325 and 330. We are pretty consistently up between 360 and 380 in all of our grade levels in enrollment. So that's just based upon who lives in Beverly and who's coming to our schools or coming back to our schools from private schools or whatever.
Okay, are there any more clarifying questions before we entertain a motion? Mayor Cahill.
Thanks, Madam President. Is there or should there be an upper end of class size above which we should consider restricting numbers, whereas below which we shouldn't have to worry about? And I'm saying that with, just thinking of our capacity at the middle school, our capacity at the high school. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So it's an easier conversation to think about for the high school because we have the decision of do we relax out from 10 to 15 or not, right?
Well, I believe you have the ability to set the numbers. If you look at the middle school right now, you already have 9 to 10, and they stay no matter what. So there are no openings right now. There's no seats available in grade 6, 7, or 8, and there's only one seat available in grade 5. Those students are here and they don't leave, they stay. So we accepted them back here. And if you, pretty much, if you look from grades 2 to grade 8, we literally only have 3 seats available. So once we've accepted them in, they're here, and that we are. The question would be if you wanted to increase that, right, to allow more choice students. But right now, we're already filled in our elementary levels all the way down. And our high school has a few openings, but not many. Really, the place that we have 10 openings is in kindergarten and 6 openings in first grade. And I would surmise that that's due to the pandemic and the fact that, people were not actively doing registrations and pursuing school choice options. So.
I guess what I was trying to get at is we built a middle school for 1,395 students. Mm-hmm. However, that's really technically an 80% number. Mm-hmm. So we should be able to handle 1,500. And 375 keeps us consistently at 1,500 kids if that's the average class size. And yet what you see when you look down to the elementary school is consistently above 375. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at that grade 1 and saying, well, is that 386 including going all the way to 10 at the choice number or no? Or does it include what we have before?
That does not include those 6 seats, correct? Like, so say in first grade, 386 would be 392, or would it stay at 386? Did you include those?
Enrollments should include the school choice.
It does include the 10 school choice seats.
It
Okay.
includes all the seats or the requests, right? There's 6 available and 3 requests.
Not the
Oh,
requests.
okay, okay. Yeah. I mean, we've touched on this in the past, and we've kind of looked back at given grade levels and assured ourselves that when you look at across the grade level, what it would and wouldn't mean for 3 more kids or 6 more kids, that it isn't necessarily pushing us beyond a class size or a number of class sections. I mean, these aren't easy, they're not easy decisions, right? I think we kind of pride ourselves on being able to offer school choice and the fact that so many families want to be in Beverly schools.
So even if you were to vote not to have seats available or lower the number, the people that are here stay. So you already have 10 in each of those grade levels. You know, you're kind of already at max. There's not new openings for those people. Yes.
But what, in the mayor's specific question, in grade 1, we
Correct.
could
Kindergarten
say,
in grade 1, you could limit it to
we're
6.
lowering that to 4. We have
do that.
4 already, and we could cap it at 4.
Yep.
And then the 386 number could not go up any higher. Well,
Correct.
I mean, it could with move-ins, right? But it wouldn't go up potentially 6 more with
Mm-hmm.
choice students.
Correct. You're right. And I will say the only other comment that I would make, our kindergarten numbers, and Bethany and I have talked about it a lot, are extremely low this year. We don't know why. We don't, we can, hypothesize about a number of things, but we literally are still in the low range for enrollments. And what I did to come up with the 340 was take the number that we're at right now, which is somewhere in the 280s, I think, and look historically at how many students enroll between May 1st and August 29th or September 1st. And I added that typically it is somewhere in the 50 or 55 range. So that's an estimate. It's always an estimate until we open schools. But we have for some reason, a very historically, low. 340 wouldn't have been low, 6 years ago. But for us now, in comparison with our other enrolled grades, it's low. So,
Ms. Visnik. Oh, sorry, Ms. Robinson first.
Oh, thank you. So that's for this coming September?
these are all rising. Yep, these are all rising
Okay.
grade levels.
Thank you.
So I wish to ask about what the mayor just said about a class size of 375 per class in the maximum capacity of this building. When we roll these numbers forward exactly as they are, right? If we cap first grade, who the heck knows about kindergarten because it's so a big question. It's so different than all the others. But if we take from first grade through 4th grade and we roll them forward, when those class sizes of 386, 385, 382, and 366 all get into this building, that will be more than 1,500. And so what is the reality of that? How does that look when that number of students get here? What happens? Like, that means
And I'm going to say, I think we have 1470 right now here.
your mic's not on.
The real, we will need to increase, that would be increased enrollment, we would need to add. So when we had the 372 bubble, which is now in 7th grade, we had to add an additional team. So if you look at the current 6th grade, there's an additional 2-person team in 6th grade because that's what we had to do. Likely, we will have additional teams added in the 5th and 6th. And then when they get to 7th and 8th, because we go to 5 classes and they're divided by 5, actually the class size numbers go down. So our class size numbers are smaller, even though they are 372 in 7th grade, they're sitting in class sizes that are 22 or 23 because they're divided up amongst 5 core classes instead of 4. So,
I guess what I'm trying to ask is if the maximum capacity of the building is 1,500, where are we putting them?
so the maximum, I don't know that it's
using
1,500.
Sorry. I've been trying to do the math. I'm the worst at math, but 1395 is meant to represent 80%.
Yes.
I think when we did it before,
Yes.
it was more, it was a little bit over 1,600 would be considered max, but we're roughly at 1,500.
Right.
And seem that
Little
like
under.
that's where we're going to be going forward. It's within our capabilities, but it does have, I'm kind of questioning, do we want class sizes approaching 400 consistently or not? I don't know. I mean, grade level, grade sizes.
They already,
I mean, I think that what we have, when we have 385, let's go to the next grade down. We have 385 in grade 2, next year's grade 2. Of that 385, only 10 of them, well, we can't throw them out because we've already accepted them and we have no empty seats, but that would have been a class size of 375. So I don't think that 10 is making a difference, and that's why I was trying to ask you about the maximum capacity of the building, because if we go over the true maximum capability, if we have, another surge and we have class sizes of 400, can we put them in the maker spaces? Can we put them somewhere else? Or are we really looking at, oh my goodness, I'm not even going to say it out loud. I'm not saying it.
so just to clarify, $13.95 is the, what the MSBA, when they come in and they only allow you, same thing at the high school, $12.95. So want to think 8 years from now, you have another scenario. But the capacity of the building that you can build is $13.95, was 80% of what the building capacity is. So if I do that, it is somewhere over 1,600, I believe, but I'm, again, I don't have I was trying to do it fast and I wasn't good at it. So, but those are all.
Mr. Milady, I see your hand.
Thank you very much. So this is a wonderful problem to have, and I think there's a lot of communities all over the place that would be like willing to give their, the right arm to be in the spot that we're at right now. So I just want to say, like, as a committee, we should be very happy and proud to see such robust numbers and all these students who want to come in. I'd be curious, Dr. Churchick, if you would like to make a recommendation, if you have a recommendation on this issue before we make our vote tonight.
I think the school choice program that we have is, as I said, it's already at capacity. So in terms of a vote, the really you're voting whether you want to continue to do it in the years to come in grades K and 1. Given that we have small enrollment in kindergarten this year, that's an opportunity to bring 10 students into the district in a class that's smaller. The first grade, maybe you want to just say, we're going to go with 10 and everything except first grade, and first grade's going to be at 4. You can do that. You have the ability to pick and choose what numbers you want at each grade level. I don't know how to unring the bell from the, previous years, because we're already at. So there's no, and the law does state once you accept a school choice student, you have that school choice student through grade 12. So. In my opinion, right now, as we sit, we have space in kindergarten for the 10 students that we would normally bring in school choice. I might also add that, sometimes having school choice gives a staff member an opportunity who might live out of town. I would tell you that some of these students are children of members of our staff, and they also participate in the school choice program, and they go through the process the same way. But that is one of the things that I do know that our staff appreciates when they're able to bring their child into Beverly. So.
I'm going to call myself real quick. Dr. Churchick, I think in your answer where you suggested reducing perhaps the number for first grade, since we have that ability due to who's in the seats right now, are you not recommending an increase at this point? Is that?
So I would not recommend an increase right now. I think that we have quite a high, I think those numbers are high. But again, the flexibility of having a school choice program, like I said, for me, the one thing that I do see is the benefit that it has. If we have staff that live out of town, they get the opportunity to participate in the opportunity to send their kids
and so
here
that
too.
grade 5 requests is what you're maybe talking about, that there's people applying already.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
I'm just noticing in the grade 5 where we're pretty much full, we've already had 6 applications,
Right.
and that's beginning of middle school. So if there were, people that were interested
Right.
in joining middle school, they sort of
Right,
should
but
have applied.
we don't have any seats in grade 5 that I know
Right,
of. Well,
right.
we have one, I think, because I think someone has announced they're not coming back, so there might be one seat.
Okay, thanks. Mayor Cahill.
This line requests as of 4/2/21. Looking at grade 1, which is already our largest class, do we know that that 3 request is still at 3? Because that's 13 days old.
Well, I don't know unless Donna would have to just look back and see if she's gotten
Yeah,
any
it
in the
hasn't
last 2 weeks.
changed.
Hasn't changed?
May have gone up.
Would there be any interest in limiting the grade 1 to 7 seats, which would cover the 4 already here and the 3 who have expressed interest? It's already the largest class in the district. We could, for the time being, limit it to 7.
What's 3 more children?
I would say that is true, that by the time you've sprinkled 3 children across 17 classrooms, that's the other, remember, we have 17 sections or 18 sections, so. But I hear your point, as they move down, they're going to be there, so.
I could also suggest we hold this and you come back and show us I'm not trying to be difficult, but we've had this conversation before about, okay, what does it mean in a given grade level? And, what are the class sizes right across the board and where would these land? And, and does, you know what I'm saying?
So the class sizes vary from year to year across the board, for one thing, so, that would,
We also have had direction, I think, in the past that there were certain schools that weren't available based on,
So the school is not, you don't apply to school choice for a school. You apply to the city of, to the Beverly Public Schools for school choice. So if the Ayers Rylside School is at 22, 22, 22, and 22, and someone applies for school choice, they're likely not going to get Ayers. They'll probably get maybe at Centerville, that might be at 17, 18, and 17. So we do have, because we have class sizes that differ across the district, we have that flexibility to they don't go to that particular school, right? So we don't close schools, we just assign students to a school that has the proper alignment.
so we have as a policy that we would, in a sense, top off,
We
even
do.
out
Correct.
before putting somebody in a
Correct.
particular school.
Correct.
Okay.
And we keep it balanced that way.
All right.
There is one more additional first grader.
First
since
grade
that date.
request.
Ms. Visnik.
I'm ready to make a motion,
Okay, Ms. Visnik.
if there's any more, like you want to ask last call.
Go ahead, please. We have a lot more to get to.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept our regular numbers, 10, 10, 10, 15, and then 15 at the upper age levels.
So Ms. Visnik is making a motion that we keep the school choice numbers, kindergarten through 8 at 10 and 9 through 12 at 15. Do we have a second?
I'll
Second.
second that.
You may second.
Sorry.
I saw Ms. Coelho's hand going up first. I was looking that direction, so thank you, Ms. Coelho. So we have a motion and a second on the table to keep the slots available at the same level as the prior year. Any more discussion? Shall we take a vote? All those in favor? 7-0. Okay, thank you. In terms of upcoming meetings and dates, I just wanted to make sure committee members were aware of different activities going on in our district, city, and state. Tomorrow evening is a public hearing of the Charter Review Committee. In years ending in 0, the City Council forms a Charter Review Committee. Mayor Cahill and I were invited guests at their March 31st meeting to share some reflections. And the public hearing is an opportunity for members of the public to share with the committee their thoughts about how our charter is working for us. And so that's an opportunity. I believe there's also another meeting for the Aubert Park erosion at the same time. I hope that each of you received an invitation from MASC, either an email or I think they snail mailed us a copy as well, for Friday morning. It's going to be a virtual day on the Hill. This is our opportunity to participate with other school committee members, with our legislators. This is a virtual day on the Hill. So registration is required. It's no charge. If you have time available, I believe it runs between 9 and noon on Friday. So do look for MASC information or shoot me an email and I'll send you the link on how to register if you'd like to participate in that. We have school vacation week, and we don't intend to have any meetings next week. Okay. But we do have a busy May upcoming. So on the 28th of April, we back-to-back our facility and finance and our committee of the whole. We anticipate finalizing our budget at that meeting as well. I'm hoping to have an update provided for our solar RFP. That work is still ongoing. And then on May 5th, we have our CISL, Curriculum Instruction Student Life. And then please note on the 12th of May, we have our public hearing at 6:30 p.m. We'll be doing it in a hybrid model where we will be physically here in the library at 6:30, and we'll encourage members of the public that wish to weigh in on our budget process to join us virtually. I think we'll maybe have some limited space physically as well as we have it set up tonight. And then at 7 p.m. that same night, we will have our regular school committee meeting, and I know that we have a number of items to address then. At the end of May, on the 26th, is our regularly scheduled committee of the whole, but my experience has been that we will want to vote on our budget to be able to transmit it to the mayor, and therefore he can prepare it for city council. So I would like people to keep open in their calendars the idea of possibly having a committee of the whole on the 19th, either backing up with FNF or maybe just prior to FNF. We can do hybrid as long as the governor's order stands, or possibly another night before the 26th, but I don't know if the 26th gives us enough time to transmit. I think the 26th, it's typically too late, so we could swap that out for an earlier, shorter meeting, perhaps. So we'll compare notes on availability offline. And I think that's what I have in terms of our updates for that section. I'll get to some more updates in a little bit. Let's turn it over to Dr. Churachek for her superintendent report.
Sorry. I said I have a long list. It looks like a long list, but I hopefully will work through most of it pretty quickly. Most of it falls under the reopening update. As always, just a quick update on the metrics for the area for the COVID. And this, I have 4 weeks worth here, because I don't think I had it updated the last time that I came. We're actually holding in a pretty steady trend. I do want to note we have 85 cases, which looks like a really large uptick until you understand that 16 of the cases reported came from Endicott. So Teresa Kirsch wanted me to be sure that I understood why the number was so high. And so we monitor this. This is some of the data that we want to keep our eye on, in addition to all of the other data that we watch on a regular basis. I wanted to share, we're going to continue with our surveillance testing that we have going. I talked a little bit earlier in advisory, but we actually are running kind of 2 types of testing right now at the high school. We have pool testing that's conducted on Tuesday. It's voluntary. Students can opt into the pool testing. Students under the 18 need to have parental consent in order to do that. Mrs. Taylor has sent all of that information out, and parents can do all of the signing up online. That consent form is also available online. That pool testing is held during the school day. We've run it now for 3 weeks, and we will be expanding that to the middle school after vacation. So after the April vacation, we'll be expanding the pool testing. We continue to run the voluntary surveillance testing on Thursdays from 11 to 4 at the high school. Cataldo Ambulance runs that for us. That's a PCR testing, and that's for students in grades K through 12. Again, that option is available, and I think we've been including city employees on that as well, so that also includes city employees, the ability for them to go. And then finally, I just wanted to remind everyone, we will be conducting testing the week of April 22nd, which is vacation week, but they will be running the testing on that Thursday. We feel like it's important to keep that testing in place and going through the vacation week. This is just a reminder, changes in travel guidance, and this is for everyone. We're reminding everyone that we know that the travel guidance is an advisory, but we really do encourage people, if you are traveling out of state over the vacation, to look at the guidance closely. Make sure that you follow it. We are offering opportunities for testing, as I said, on Thursday afternoons from 11 to 4. The Stop the Spread sites are also still up and running, and I think the hours for those are all available online. There is exceptions for people who are fully vaccinated. And so, if you are fully vaccinated, that's different. But we would also want to make sure that even if you are, you continue to monitor yourself for symptoms. And please, I think I've said it 1,000 times, what is helping our schools run really well is that we're not sending students to school if they're not feeling well. Staff is not coming to school if they're not feeling well. Monitoring our symptoms is really one of the best ways that we can stop if we prevent anybody coming to school that has symptoms, then that's one less problem for spreading. So we've been doing really well in our schools with that, so we wanted that to continue. I wanted to update you on transportation. Transportation is up and running at the high school. We have students who we actually have extended the distance limits to 1.8 miles. Currently, we have 105 riders, and we do have seats available. The survey link is available on the transportation webpage, and we are planning to scale down to 1.6 miles as this route availability is determined. So if you're living within 1.6 miles and out, please encourage you to go ahead on and apply for the transportation through the link online. Middle school transportation has begun with students 1.9 miles and out. We currently have 265 riders. We have 35 that will be added based upon the last round. And what has been happening is that they have been sending out a reminder to transportation to students who have ridden before. A Connect Ed message goes out, and parents are encouraged to apply. Again, we are only adding seats as they are available and based upon distance. So we're looking now to scale the distance as soon as we get these 35 riders on the bus. We'll take a look, see where we have empty seats. The one thing that is important for people to understand is that the availability of seats varies by run. So there could be more seats available on one run than another. And so, we're doing the best we can to kind of watch and see how we do that. I did talk with Dana today. We're exploring after April vacation, adding back some of the runs. We had some runs in Beverly that ran that never hit the 2-mile mark. And so those were people who were getting transportation. They were within 2 miles. They weren't mandated riders. Those were fee-based. And we have not added those back in yet, mostly because we haven't had our drivers back. But we have continued to get drivers back as they're vaccinated and as they're returning to work. And so we'll be exploring adding back some runs that are less than 2 miles. Elementary is back in, and we've increased it as we shifted to full in-person. There are 232 riders that are riding for elementary, and these numbers don't include our special education riders or our vendor transportation that's going on. I did note, just to give you an idea of how we're running with transportation, last year we transported 1,543, so we're still really only somewhere at about 40%, 35% capacity in what we're transporting. That's just an update. I know that we've been responding. Dana's been doing a great job responding to parents. We're doing our best to kind of open up more opportunities for transportation as we go. So, and if anybody has questions, they can always call the transportation office for information, anybody that's watching.
Ms. Visnik.
Well, I have a question on the previous slide. How do you have a sense of how many people are taking advantage of the pool testing at Beverly High?
Yes, not many. At last count, it was somewhere between 60 and 70 students that participated in the pool testing. And at first I thought, oh my goodness, that's not very many. When I talked to other superintendents in neighboring districts, that seems to be the percentage, that there's just not as many people participating in it. However, I think what was important for us was to have the structure of the pool testing in place so that at any point in time, we can scale it really quickly. And we believe, it's offered through DESE. It's a free service that we're utilizing. It includes the dashboard, the courier service, and all of that. So I would encourage parents to think about if they want to have their child participate, they just need to send the consent form in. There's very little disruption to their day. The testing is set up at the exit on the way out. They just need to stop and get a little swab done. And I can report that we haven't had any positive pools in our pool testing. We've been doing it for 3 weeks, so that's a good sign. But really, I would encourage you, it's there, and it's there. It's one of the mitigation strategies that we think will really help. So anybody that is interested, Mrs. Taylor has forwarded that information out a couple of times. So, and I believe it's available on the high school website, but I'll double check with her and make sure that it is. But
Ed?
It is my understanding that there is a reasonable chunk of, a reasonable group, let's put it that way, a reasonable sized group that's currently on quarantine in the high school. And so, like, were all of those, sometimes you report to us and you say they were, they never came to school, right? And so are we on that same track?
so I think I think that they're, so if you are identified by anyone, by the public health staff or our school nurses as a close contact, then you are informed that you need to quarantine. And so it could be that you're a member of a team, and if one member of a team is identified, or if you play in a sport against, sometimes there's a team, and I believe that there might be one athletic team that right now is quarantined. So that could be it. I know that when we do the contact tracing, it's anyone that's been within 6 feet for 15 minutes or more cumulatively throughout the day. So our contact tracing is a matter of following if a student has been identified as having been in the building within the past 48 hours, they follow through and they identify who those contacts are. It has not been reported to me that we've had a huge uptick in any way. I do know that there was a group of students, and I would also reiterate that we do the contact tracing as well as try to identify where they might have come in contact with it, and it's been determined that most of it is all off campus. So it's not as if someone has been exposed to the virus and gotten the virus at school. It's that the exposure is happening outside of school. So we have not had reports of spread within the school. The reports have only been that has happened outside of school.
But outside of school could be in our sports.
Even though those were traced back and it was a social event that happened outside of the sport.
Okay.
So we do follow up. So one of the things that we're very fortunate about, and I think it's kind of unique to Beverly, we have, on our Board of Health, we have Teresa Kirsch, but we also have a specific liaison to the public schools. It's Joyce Pryor, who used to be a nurse at Centerville. She is specifically looking at all of our cases within our schools and doing the contact tracing. And so we have we have been very careful about follow-ups and making sure we understand where exposures happen and how we have to in order to do the contact tracing. So it's been very thorough, very, very thorough. So that's a good thing. So,
Ms. Robinson.
Just as a follow-up to Ms. Visnik, but if, regardless of where it happened, an entire team would have to quarantine.
If they're exposed.
Yes.
It's not that there was spread, it's just that there was exposure.
Yeah, I
So
just
yeah,
wanted to clarify that.
there is specific guidelines for sports teams and what they have to do in response, and so we follow whatever that is. And it can sometimes be that you were at a meet or a game, and it was the opponent that had an exposure, but you participated in that same event, and so both teams quarantine.
Yeah, I think it's important that the public hears that,
Yeah.
too.
But we follow, and we usually, on each individual case, call into the state, and the state has a group that will guide us through that process, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. I wanted to touch base a little bit. We have opened full in-person at our elementary school and at our middle school. Our elementary last week on Monday, April 5th. And I sort of felt like a picture was worth 1,000 words. And so an opportunity to see some of our students. These are at each of the 5 elementary schools, students participating in lunch, either outdoors or indoors. In the bottom corner is Ms. Sepka, who is the art teacher at Hannah, and her fabulous art on a cart attitude as she goes around from classroom to classroom so that they can, and we're really, really excited that our expressive arts are back in place for our kids now that they're in full day at the elementary. Having the opportunity to kind of get that melded into their day in person has been really exciting. And at middle school, we had our return to full in-person at middle school on Monday. We have, these are just a bunch of pictures about different ways. You can see these are two different cafeterias, the first floor cafeteria and the third floor cafeteria, where the majority of students eat. We have students in tents outside, working, or outside in that outdoor play area. We've been working really hard. Mrs. Oliver reports that we start with those buckets nicely spaced at 6 feet at the 5th grade lunch, and at 6th grade they start to climb a little closer in 7th grade, and so we're working really hard in our 7th and 8th grade lunches to push them back. We have little marks down, and the buckets have to go back over the marks when we go back down. But I did want to share the picture in the lower left corner is how they start. That's how we begin our outdoor lunch. And remember too that students, when they're outside, and they're not always, they eat pretty quickly, and the policy is that if they're not eating, their masks are back on again. So, and they also have the opportunity when they're outside to get up and move around. They're also not assigned to the same lunch mode each day. It rotates, so you might be indoors for 2 days, and then you hit a tent, and then you move so that you're in an outdoor group, so that there's some variety as to what you're doing for lunches. Like everything, it's a work in progress, and we monitor and refine our procedures every day. The picture in the upper right-hand corner is the arrival, which I thought actually was just a fabulous picture from the 3rd floor. But that's the arrival in the morning. We have our arrival procedures and our dismissal procedures have been greatly improved, maybe as a result of the pandemic and the change in leadership. Students now arrive into their neighborhood doors instead of all en masse coming in one door. And the buses still continue to arrive in the bus loop. So really capitalizing on some of the design features that the building had when we built the building originally. And I was amazed. I have to say I was there for arrival, and it was 9:48, and the cars were moving. There were no cars backed up in the lot. We do have significant traffic that we continue to monitor. Many thanks to the Beverly Police Department. They've been out in force, helping us with the traffic, getting it in and out and moving it. The real problem seems to be backing up on Cabot Street, and so I know Mrs. Oliver has been meeting regularly with the traffic people and the police officers, so we're working on that. Dismissal, 3:05. Students were out the door and gone, and it went seamlessly, so we think the procedures are working really well so far. So that was information on the middle school and the elementary school. And now to talk about high school. So I told you we foreshadowed a little in our advisory meeting when we were talking with the high school students. I will report that the commissioner had a commissioner's call today and announced that he will be recommending, it's not set in stone yet, but that all districts will be required to transition to full in-person instruction by May 17th. Again, that hasn't been finalized, but that's a date that we can look at as a target date that he is setting as the deadline for transition to full in-person. I would like to just remind the committee that MCAS administration for us is being held during the weeks of May 3rd and May 10th. We sat with the administration, Dr. Flaherty and myself, and the high school team, and we've looked at many options around what recommendations we might want to make. We examined looking at a full return on May 3rd, which we had always in our heads said, well, maybe we'll target that as a date. However, there are 4 MCAS days scheduled in the 6 days that follow May 3rd, on May 4th and 5th, and on May 10th and 11th. And so if you remember, even historically, when we're full in person and there isn't a pandemic and we don't have distancing concerns, we have used a delayed opening in order to administer the MCAS in the morning. And so one of our concerns about a full return on May 3rd would be that we would come back on May 3rd, and then on 4th and 5th, we'd have a delayed opening, and then we'd have 2 full days, and then we'd be back to a delayed opening for the 10th and the 11th. So what we've also looked at is a return on May 13th and remaining in the 2/3 hybrid until then. And this, ironically, the conversation at our advisory this morning, much of the afternoon we spent talking about how many times we've asked our students to shift in their scheduling and to transition from one schedule to another schedule. And it does take a couple of weeks to settle in. And there is some opportunity, I think, that learning can be interrupted when that happens. So I think that the recommendation that we would be coming forward with right now would be to target May 13th as a return to full in-person. It's still a couple of days in advance of the 17th that the commissioner is projecting as the required date. We would then also recommend that we look at May 4th and 5th and May 10th and 11th and have the MCAS days be remote for grades 9 and for those non-test taking students in grade 11. That would allow them to participate in their regular school day remotely and also allow the students that are testing to go home and log on and access their academics in the afternoon. We think that's the least disruptive to what we can do. And so I think, in terms of a recommendation, that's where I sit right now. And I know we like to make sure we're providing the community with enough notice as to when these transitions would happen. So I wanted to come forward tonight and just share that with you. So any questions?
Are there any clarifying questions? Ms. Visnik?
On the call, was the MCAS set in stone? Because I thought that was the last time we talked about MCAS.
I do have an MCAS update on the next slide. So I'll catch up with you on that one, but yes. Yes, it is, and I will follow up with that with you.
Mayor Cahill?
Thanks, Madam President. On the 4 MCAS days, what happens with the kids who wouldn't be in under the 2/3 hybrid? Are they in? In other words, is everybody in because it's MCAS?
If they're taking MCAS, they'd be in. If they're not taking MCAS, they'd be remote.
For those kids for that 1/3 cohort that wouldn't be
They
in.
would still be remote.
Right. So in other words, on those days, more than 2/3 will be in because.
No. I'm suggesting that if you're in 9th grade or if you're an 11th grader and you're not taking the test, you would be remote on those days.
Oh.
You would go through your regular hybrid schedule remotely, and you would access your classes remotely on the Tuesday and the Wednesday. And if you were taking the test, you would go to school, you'd take the test. So there's a reason for that. There's up to 400 students that we would be testing. We also are required to bring the Remote Learning Academy students into the building to take the test. So we need to have the proctors and the space to be able to do all of that. So typically, in a normal year, I hate that word normal, in a typical year, we have MCAS testing and we do a delayed arrival. So only the test takers come to school on time that day. The rest of the students arrive at 10:30 or 10:45. And with an 11:50 dismissal, bringing them in at 10:45 doesn't make any sense. It's actually much more seamless and I think much more effective instruction for them to just go remote on those 2 days and access their academics. That way they get a full day in. If they're not testing, they get a half day in, plus they take the test if they are.
Wow. So in those 2 weeks, the 9th graders and some 11th graders are going to be remote, entirely remote for 4 days. And depending.
In 2 weeks, right.
Yeah. And then depending on where they land on those other days, they may be remote, they may be in.
Correct.
Wow.
So, and I think I hear what you're saying. We looked at this a number of different ways. The challenge with going back full in on May 3rd is that you still get disrupted. So you come in on Monday, and then Tuesday and Wednesday you have a delayed arrival, and then on Thursday and Friday you're in, and then Monday you're in, and then Tuesday and Thursday you have a delayed arrival. We just really think, and the students have to change their schedule multiple times, so they have to switch from the hybrid model they're in now to a full day schedule, to a delayed arrival schedule, to a full day schedule, back to a delayed arrival schedule. It's just very disruptive. And so for consistency's sake, we believe that coming back on the 13th and staying in the 2/3 hybrid until then is the best model for us.
When will you be looking for us to vote on this? Or is there a vote involved?
I'm looking to Rachel.
We didn't
You
compare
voted on
notes
all
at-
the other returns, so I
right.
guess I'm making my recommendation to
Right.
you. I would,
Would
you know.
it be the 28th that would make sense to do it? Just having seen it?
It doesn't, I mean, there's not much, there's not a lot of, so I guess I was trying to remain true to the 2-week notice for parents. So that was my main, we had talked about having the ability to make sure the parents had some notice before a change was made in the structure of the schedule, so.
Ms. Robinson?
Thank you. I just have a question that I just wrote out. So the all-in is going to inevitably create more close contacts. And more need to quarantine, not because of any in-school spreading, but just because of the nature of being around more people. How are we going to be equipped to deal with that with the least disruption to consistency?
Yeah.
For students' education? There's obviously, the students are able to beam into a classroom, but they might not feel quite as comfortable because it's not a cohort, that's the close contact on the screen. So I just think that that's something.
Yeah, so
important
we
to
do
discuss.
feel like the live streaming option has been really a lifesaver and would continue to be in that situation. That will be the case for all of our, for our students. We'll be dealing with quarantining and how we provide instruction. The high school is particularly well suited for that. The live streaming has been going really, really well, and teachers and students are far more comfortable with the concurrent teaching as it's going. And so we know that we have that. That's one thing that we have available. Beyond that, unless the CDC looks at different close contact guidelines for schools, which they may or may not do around the 6 foot or 3 foot, there's not really, we will be at 3 foot distancing when we have full in person. And that would, it's no different. It just entails 3 contacts probably in each, 3 or 4 contacts in each class that a student might be in. So,
And I understand that the seniors will be gone, but that doesn't change the classroom, that the
well, it actually
students are
does in a number of our classrooms, because we do have multi-graded classrooms. So we do have a number of our highest enrolled classes typically tend to be our electives. And our electives are multi-graded. So it actually, when I speak with Mrs. Taylor, she actually said that actually is, something that happens because the seniors are out. We do have the elective classes, which are the ones that are usually the highest enrolled, will drop in enrollment with the seniors out.
Calling myself quickly. I had a comment and I wanted to make a motion, but I wanted to sort of comment and explain the motion that I wanted to make. I think that there is good promise that certain vaccines will receive approval for our younger students, and I am very hopeful that if we can wait until May 17th to bring everyone full back. I listened quite closely to our student advisory, and I think that the comfort level of having distancing in the classroom has helped with the transition, and that the schedule is starting to make sense. And so my hope is that if we could wait till May 17th, more of our students might have access. The younger students might have more access to vaccines, and our older students as well, the 16 plus, are probably just now thinking about whether they can get an appointment over April vacation. And then if they have to get a second dose, then, I hear it's affecting young people a little bit more severely, perhaps, than some of us older folks. So I would like to make a motion that we, even though the recommendation was for the 13th, that we wait until Monday, the 17th to return and our high school students to their full day of in-person learning.
Second.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the table with a second from Ms. Robinson. Is there some discussion? Ms. Visnik?
I, in theory, appreciate that motion. I wonder if we won't have a meeting next week. I'm looking at a calendar, I think. I think next week is school vacation week. It's like half of April, half of May. I have to keep jumping back and forth, right? So next week's school vacation week, yes or no? Okay, so then the week after that is the 28th, and we do have a meeting. And if we were to delay our vote until the 28th, that would still give families 2.5 weeks notice before we would give them two weeks and a day if we were then to vote on Dr. Chirochek's recommendation of the 13th, or 2.5 weeks if we vote on your motion of the 17th. If in fact the commissioner says we have to do the 17th, we have to do the 17th. I feel like I don't want to vote yet because this is the first week of having our middle schoolers back. And Dr. Chirochek heard from me this week because I heard not good things about how lunch was run. And I think all of us hesitated when we voted. And our big concern is, what are we doing with those children, especially when they don't have their masks on? And so there's a big part of me that doesn't want to vote on sending even more children back full-time and having to deal with lunch until we get some more data back on what's happening with the children in this building and or our elementary school children who are already learning to deal with having lunch. So it's just, my idea is that maybe we could delay the vote.
Okay, Mayor Cahill, I saw your hand next.
Yes, I don't want to vote tonight. My reasoning is we've had all of 10 minutes to begin to digest these two options of the more than two that Dr. Trochek and her team have been working through. So yeah, simple as that. It's just I can't vote tonight.
Do we have any more discussion? Are we prepared to vote? A motion to table takes a 2/3 vote, but
I'm gonna say out of respect to our colleagues, I'm gonna make a motion to table.
okay, we have a motion to table. Mr. Milady, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. McKenzie. Okay, I don't believe motion to table is debatable, so we're looking for a 2/3 vote to table the main motion. All those in favor of tabling the main motion? Okay, unanimous. We will table this and we'll pick it up at our April 28th meeting. Okay,
It's fine.
okay.
Okay. MCAS update. So we do have some updated information on MCAS. First of all, the Department of Ed has approved remote MCAS administration for students who are currently learning remotely. So our students in grades 3 through 8 only, who are in the Remote Learning Academy and have opted to stay there for the remainder of the year, will have the opportunity to take MCAS remotely, which is really helpful in a number of ways. In our tech department, and Dr. Flaherty and our principals will be attending a webinar on just sort of the specifics of how that will work and how that will roll out. In terms of the modified competency determination for grade 11, Commissioner Riley will recommend to the board that our state graduation requirements for students in grades 11, which is the class of 22, so that they so that he wants them to modify the state graduation requirements so that they don't need to pass the ELA or the math in order to meet the graduation requirement. It's already the case that they don't have to pass the science. That was voted on last year. Grade 11 students who do choose to take the MCAS, and I will tell you that in Beverly, we do have a number of our 11th grade students that did sign up to take the MCAS, and they're doing that for the purposes of qualifying for the Abigail Adams Scholarship. So, and that students who take the test this spring will have the results in fall in time to learn whether or not they qualify for the scholarships before they apply to colleges. So those are just some changes that were made to the MCAS. There will be an MCAS administered to students in grades 10. There will be a small number of 9th graders who need to continue to take the biology MCAS. And MCAS will be administered in grades 3 through 8. The MCAS test, as we've reported before, has been shortened, but it is, there's not going to be any changes to that, at least tonight. That's what I will report for you tonight. So any questions on MCAS before I go on?
Ms. Visnik?
And what are our 10s being tested on? You said bio for the nines?
So historically, yes, the ninth grade is science, and the biology is administered to ninth graders. English and language arts and math are in 10th.
And what about the 10s who didn't take MCAS last year because we were closed? Like my 10th grader has not taken ninth grade bio.
I will have to give you an answer on that later. I don't have it off the top of my head, and I don't think Dr. Flaherty does either. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Yes. Oh, the science is waived as a competency determination, and it doesn't factor into the Abigail Adams, so they likely won't take a science. Ninth graders, though, it has not been waived for. So it was waived for the 10th and 11th graders last year. So yes, that's. But they did not. We were closed.
Right, but I was thinking of.
Right. So as I think through it, that's where I think it falls. But I'll let you know if I find out differently. Or if Ian comes home and says, I have to take the bio test today, Mom, then we'll really know. All right. I wanted to talk a little bit about virtual school option. One of the things that the Department of Ed had stressed to all of the districts was that we are anticipating a return to full in-person instruction in the fall. And so if in fact a school district or a community had demonstrated an actual need for a continuation of some kind of remote learning, or if a district wanted to offer that to the families in their district, what needed to happen is that you had to actually create an entirely new school, a virtual learning academy school. So rather than, we didn't want to just let it go without investigating it and taking a look and surveying our families. So we, in order to do it, I'll just give you a little information about what it is. What we would be eligible to apply for at this point in time this year is a single school district that enrolls only students in the district. And if school committees are interested in developing a district virtual school, it would require a letter of intent from the school committee. So that's why I'm here. I first we didn't know how our survey would end up, and I wanted to make sure you knew that that option was something that we explored. And so there's a lot of requirements that you would have to do in the application process. I'll move ahead a little bit. First of all, these are the 4 steps that you have to take. You have to do the letter of intent. The proposal would be reviewed. The local school committee would need to take a vote, and then there would be a final proposal submission to DESE. So those are the steps that you would take. We did do a survey. I don't know if any of we sent the survey out to all students who are currently enrolled in our remote learning academy, as well as students that are homeschooled. It was a pool of about 500 people that we sent the survey out to. We looked at the results, and as you can see, there's a very small number of students who would be, of families who responded that they would be interested in a virtual learning academy. We had a few more who said they were interested in learning more about that. We followed that up with taking a look at what grade levels they were in. We broke that all down. And so one of the challenges that we came up against is that one of the requirements for application is that you have to be able to have an actual documented demand from the community that would meet a threshold for the application process. And so at this time, our survey results don't meet the requirement for what we would need to meet in order to establish that. However, we really believe, and we've learned through this year, that a remote option can be an important component of a comprehensive strategy to serve the needs of some of our learners. And so we're going to continue to explore options. We won't be able to do it for the 21-22 school year, but throughout the 21-22 year, we'll continue to look at options. One of the options that we would like to explore is to work with other communities around that may not also have met the threshold, but may have some interest. And so maybe a more regionalized version of a virtual academy that we could partner with some other districts around. And I know that there is some interest, so that's something that as part of our strategic planning that we're going to embark on next year, we'll take a deeper look at. So I just wanted to share that we investigated it, we took a look at it, and, unfortunately, we didn't have the numbers that we needed to sustain it, but, we're going to continue to take a look at it because we do know that we have some families that, felt like this was a good option for their child. Any questions on that one?
Mayor Cahill?
Thanks, Madam President. Just since that's so small,
Yep.
what was the What were the real numbers and
So,
percentages?
yeah, the real numbers, it's easy, I can easily say there was not a single grade level that exceeded single digits. So we literally had ranged from 2, there was one grade that was at 8 or 9, but most of them were in the 2 or 3 per grade level. We really needed to have, we were looking for 15 in even a combined grade level. We never hit that threshold, so that's where we were.
Thanks.
All right. This is just a point of information for the committee. We will be entering into negotiations, collective bargaining negotiations with the Beverly Teachers Association. We spent a lot of time working with the union over the past year, and we had really talked about the opportunity to look at interest-based bargaining as a bargaining strategy and an approach to bargaining that we could work with the union. The union's negotiating team is interested. Our negotiating committee was interested. So we have set up a date for training. Basically, it's not an agreement to do interest-based bargaining. What you agree is to do the training. And so our negotiating committee and the union's negotiating committee will attend a training on May 6th. At the end of that, each committee has the option to decide whether or not that's the right approach that we want to use. And so just as an update, we know we're going into our negotiations for our collective bargaining for all of our units in the Beverly Teachers Association. So that's just sort of an update on that. And I think that John and Karen and Rachel are the members of the negotiating committee, and it's all confirmed for the May 6th date. So. And then finally, as you know, John Harmon had moved to another position. We are pleased to announce that Mrs. Erin Brown has accepted the role as our new Director of Information and Human Resources. In Mrs. Brown's leadership over the past 9 years at the North Beverly Elementary School and her 7 previous years at Beverly High School, she has served our community as a building leader. We're now excited to welcome her to the central office, where in her new role, she will be leading the department that serves our most crucial resource, our human resources. In addition to her added role as Director of Information Resources, Erin will oversee our data and information management, and she'll begin this position on July 1st. And I know that Erin is on the line, so please join me in welcoming Erin to this new role. So Erin, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I just wanted to say I'm excited to serve the community in this new capacity. Like Sue said, I've been an administrator in Beverly for 16 years, and I feel very fortunate to have this opportunity in this great city. So thank you very much, and I look forward to working with all of you.
Awesome, and I know there are some sad people. Yes, we'll do some clapping. Yay! I know we have some sad people in North Beverly to see Mrs. Brown leave their school as their principal, where she's done such a great job, but I also know that her leadership has led that building into a position where the climate and the culture and things are in really good condition. So we look forward to beginning a search process for the new principal there. We will be sending out information to the North Beverly community about the search process with a timeline, and we'll be posting that position, we're going to have we will run a full search now that the pandemic is over, and the committee, actually, Gabrielle Montevecchi has agreed to chair the search committee for us, and Dr. Flaherty will work with her facilitating that committee. So more information from that will come out to the North Beverly community. So we invite you all to tell us your interest in participating, and we look forward to that search. And Erin, we're so excited to have you on board, so thank you. All right. Oh gosh, we're just starting the budget process. All right, so we have a lot of information to share around the budget process. I'm going to start, as I always do, with our district goals. As you know, we presented our district improvement plan to the Curriculum and Instruction Committee. Do you want to?
Yeah, can we just take a brief?
Yeah, that would be
Okay.
good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stretch.
Okay, thank you. Just a brief recess before we delve into the budget. Dr. Churchak, if you
All right,
would.
thank you. I always start when we talk about budget with refocusing us on our objectives and our district goal areas. We presented our district improvement plan, and these are our focus areas for this coming school year. And so we have tried in building the budget to make sure that we're reflecting our goals in each area that we have addressed. So quickly engaged learning, cultural responsive and social emotional needs, rigorous and consistent curriculum, looking at our curriculum review and our advanced coursework, and operations and management, taking a look at hiring practices and recruiting and succession. So again, just a reminder, the major factors that are impacting the FY22 budget. We have contractual obligations. Our contractual obligations, before we do anything in this year, would indicate an increase in $1.9 million to the budget. So that's just a number. And we have enrollment constraints to think about, in that some of our funding that comes back from Chapter 70 will not reflect the 101 homeschool students who homeschooled for the first time during this school year during the pandemic. We will not get the money for them because they were not on the October 1 rolls. And then finally, the last three sections here are these are all items that we will be addressing through the ESSER grants. We have ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and an ESSER 3 that will be announced soon. So we do have a lot of additional funding that we can use. The problem with additional funding is that it's only going to come in the years that it's going to come. And so one of the fears that I have, or one of the concerns that I have in building a budget, is to make sure that as we build a budget, we don't build a budget that eventually we get to a point where we're so far behind that we fall off a cliff in terms of what we have for funding, or we need a huge influx of money to keep pace with what we've been using other external funding sources for. But again, looking at learning lost and learning lag, addressing the recovery and renewal process, and making sure we have attention to remediation with access and acceleration. Some quick numbers on our contractual obligations. We are, as I mentioned earlier, entering into negotiations for our collective bargaining agreement with the BTA. So that number will be to be determined. 1% of the COLA for the year would be $468,663. A 2% COLA would be $936,126. Those are just benchmark numbers for you to have. That's just to give you an idea of what a percentage of increase in the COLA would be, so that you have that in your head. Our steps are actually determined. We already do know that that's an actual number. In the way that we move through our steps, we know that there will be advancements that will be to the amount of $520,145. And we always estimate our lanes at 180. Jean and I looked, we're always within about a $6,000 to $7,000 range for that. So those are the people who are moving over lanes based upon credits that they have acquired, graduate credits. Finally, the reserve for negotiations is to be determined because we are entering into the negotiations. We also are estimating a health care increase at 3%. That's a number that we typically are issued from Bryant, and so that would be $234,267. So these are the contractual obligations, things that we're obligated to do before we look at any changes to our budget. So we do have some new requests, and these, if you'll see how I've laid them out, the requests are labeled either as for the appropriated budget or for the ESSER or grants. When we have applied something to what we believe needs to go in the appropriated budget, we've done that just with an eye to these would be recurring costs. These would be costs that are enrollment driven in a younger grade that we know is not going to go away, or costs to some of our special education programs that we know we need to because we have increasing numbers. So we're looking at the 1.7 elementary teachers. That represents, I think it's a 1 elementary teacher at the North Beverly Elementary School based upon enrollments, and the 0.7 is a split between Hannah and Centerville for our music teacher, I think. Our elementary AIM teacher is just due to an increase in numbers of students that require that programming. A preschool para has been requested. The middle school Attain teacher, again, is enrollment numbers at the middle school in our Attain program. At the high school, we took a look earlier at how the numbers are increasing, and Betty has requested a 0.6 wellness and a 0.6 art teacher as those larger numbers go into the high school. One of the places that we really see an increase in need for staffing is in our electives. We're requesting a director of college and career readiness. We talked a little bit about this at the last meeting. That is someone who will work directly with the administration around the creation of some of the pathways that we're working on, liaison to the After Dark program, taking a look at the guidance practices, taking a look at some of the ways that we can look at increasing equity within the advanced coursework. Some of the findings that we've had from our equity audit are directly related to us thinking that this is a position that we feel is something that needs to be added at the high school. Bethany has requested an additional OT assistant and speech therapist. Again, that's caseload related to enrollment numbers in our district. We're asking for 8 bus monitors. We have put them on this year utilizing some of the stimulus funds, but the bus monitors, given the, we don't believe going back that we're going to be ready to have students just jump on the bus and sit wherever. So we believe that that's an important piece. And then we've also requested a technology support integration specialist. Given that we've pretty much tripled the amount of devices and the use of technology in the district over the last year, the supports for them are really important. And so this is someone to work within the IT department, supporting the use of our devices throughout the district. We've have requests, these are requests that we are sort of saying, these are positions that we'd like to add for the coming year, but these would all be funded through our, the stimulus money that's coming our way, the ESSER grants. We have ESSER 1, we have ESSER 2. They're all designed to provide funding to the district for recovery, renewal, looking at equity, all of those things. So we're looking at 5 elementary teachers, 1 for each building. One of the things that Jean and I have we've been in a lot of webinars lately as we look at how this funding comes in, and it's wonderful to receive extra funding, but it also comes with a lot of constraints and how we can use it. And one of the things we have to be really careful about is looking at maintenance of effort and maintenance of equity, and that basically means that while technically we can supplant things utilizing the ESSER grants, which we can't do with our entitlement grants, we still have to maintain our maintenance of effort around what the appropriated budget covers. So we can't really put everything out of whack based upon the ESSER funds or pour all services into one place or another. So looking at the elementary level, in each building, there's a particular grade level that either principals would add a teacher to allow more recovery efforts with smaller class sizes in that grade over a 1 or 2 year period. These would be positions that would not be recurring. They would really last only through the life of the grant, maybe 1, maybe 2, depending on, we don't know what next June is going to look like and what our recommendations will be then. An elementary para, we would like to add 7 elementary paras just to provide supports throughout the buildings on some of the interventions and some of the work that we feel might need to be done. At the middle school, they're requesting 2 instructional coaches, which are really innovation coaches that would help with taking a look at providing some more differentiated instruction, utilizing the multi-tiered systems of support, looking at UDL within the classrooms. They're also requesting 2 additional reading teachers that would be directly providing interventions to some of the challenges that students may have faced in losses that they may have had over the past year. Remember, we want to bring students back. We want to provide them with grade level instruction, but we want to support them in that. So that's one of the reasons why I think she went in this direction. There's a request for an outreach counselor at the middle school, particularly helping to address some of the mental health issues and some of the social emotional issues that we might see. Looking at a high school special education teacher. Excuse me.
You need some water. You want a cough drop?
Breathing in the mask is lovely.
Yeah, they go get you some water.
All right, sorry about that.
Would you like us to jump to some committee reports? We have some catch-up that we need to do.
Thank you.
We missed our committee reports last time due to the lights going out, and let's hopefully not repeat that. Ms. Visnik, would you quickly and efficiently get us some updates on finance and facilities, please?
Yes, Finance and Facilities last met on St. Patrick's Day, and we talked about the new and updated job description for the position of Director of Human and Information Resources. And we already met her this evening. It's not a new position, but a restructuring which will result in some much needed redundancy in our central office. We did our normal business around the review of revenues, expenses, transfers, and acceptance of grants and gifts to schools. We are next scheduled to meet on April 28th, and we have discussed the possibility of food service director as our special guest. but our next meeting is stacked. So we are thinking that we have to be mindful of time, so we might not have a guest speaker at all. Possible future topics, especially as they relate to facilities, include the state of the fields relative to the variant issue, or we might talk about some items from the Resilient Together Joint Climate Action Committee. For instance, if that committee is recommending more recycling or composting or clean energy usage, how might the schools be able to comply and what impacts might that have on the school budget? So that was our report, and now we have items that need to come to this committee for a vote. The Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities recommends the approval of the following grants for FY21 totaling $225,178. Can I take them as a total?
I believe so. This is a collection of new allocations, increases, and decreases that total that amount, and I would make that motion to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Milady. Is there any questions or discussion? All those in favor? 7-0, thank you.
The Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities recommends the approval of the following DPH Comprehensive School Health Services Grant. It's an increase of we already had a certain amount of money from them, and it's an increase of an additional $5,000.
I'll make a motion that we accept that increased grant.
Second.
Sure, go ahead.
Is it an increase of 15,000? Or?
Yeah.
15,000, right? It's an increase of 15,000.
Oh, increase of
Yeah,
15,
increase
so
of
the new
15.
total is 20. Okay.
My bad,
Yes.
sorry.
Okay.
I amend my motion to state that correctly. Okay.
My second was correct.
Your second was correct, of course, Mr. Milady. Do we have any more questions or discussion? All those in favor of accepting the $15,000 increase? That's 7-0. Thank you.
And finally, the Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities recommends approval of the attached February 2021 gifts to schools, which total $10,310.20.
I'd make a motion with gratitude to accept the gifts to our schools. Thank you, Dr. McKenzie. Okay. So we have a motion and a second. No discussion. All those in favor? Thank you. 7-0. Okay.
I already gave my report. We next meet on April 28th after
Yep.
school vacation week.
Sounds great. Would you like to return?
I'm back.
Okay, we'll return to
Thank
budget
you.
and we'll hit the other committees later.
All right, thank you. Sorry about that. That was a good idea to switch to that to save time. So I think where I left off was that there's a request for a 1.0 high school special education teacher. That again is to support the co-teaching model at the high school. That will be supported by a grant other than the ESSER grants. That would probably be something that stays, something out of the special education grant. There's a request for a 0.5 adjustment counselor at the high school. That would come out of ESSER. And also the director of high school curriculum, which we've talked about with you before, would come out of some of the entitlement grants. That too would be something that stayed, but we would be funding through some of our other grant sources. There are some requests that are not staff. We heard earlier from Dr. Riccio about the After Dark program. So one of the things that we want to clarify is that we do receive reimbursement from the government, from the state, for our students that attend because they get a higher reimbursement rate. That money comes in through our Chapter 70 money. However, there will be about $30,000 of recurring costs that will stay in the appropriated budget for us to support the students that go there. So we get reimbursed. We received a reimbursement of about $97,000. The cost of our students attending is somewhere around $110,000. That was for the 21 students. We'll be doubling the number because we'll have the rising juniors that are going next year. So we believe that we need $30,000 in the appropriated budget to cover the cost of that program. We will look to take $90,000 out of ESSER if in fact the grant that we've applied for with Essex Tech doesn't come through, it came through for us for this first group. It would also cover the next group, but if not, we do have the money that we would fund out of ESSER for that. And then in the following year, that would come in through Chapter 70 for us as a form of reimbursement. So that's how we would be managing that. We anticipate $50,000 in special education transportation costs. We're looking to improve our transportation software, and that's at a cost of $13,000. And special education tuitions, we do know that we get the estimates in, and so we know that we'll have an increase of $144,369. Funding under ESSER as well, we're moving some of our one-time technology costs onto the ESSER grant. We believe we can do that. We've really been fortunate to have the support of the CARES Act money that we've had this past year. We're in really good shape in terms of our hardware technology, and so we think that we can do that from ESSER this year. We're also looking to utilize about $200,000 of ESSER funds for curriculum materials. I know that you've heard me speak before that we're in a math review now, and we'll be entering an ELA review for our curriculum review for materials, and so we're setting aside some of that funding for that. I know that I sent you the supporting documents that outlined the expenses or the changes to the budget, and I highlighted each one of them. This just sort of has broken that down for you by the slides. So any questions on any of those? I think I would ask, is there anything that was on there that you don't think should be on there? Is there anything on there that, you know, that you think I missed, think that should have been on there?
Ms. Visnik?
I have two, well, I have one comment and one question. We'll go with the question first. From a technology point of view, this money and or any other COVID-related money that we had, have we been able to use that to, for instance, provide the Wi-Fi or actual devices for our children? And so is this $68,000 for devices for our children? Is it for our own district devices?
To be honest, I think that this is specifically targeted to enhance the Wi-Fi in the outdoor spaces on the campuses of the school. That's one of the expenses that we're trying to cover. And it would be, I think, just sort of some supplemental monies to support that we would take out of that. I think it's money that I would have normally put into appropriated thinking we needed it, but we're pulling it out of ESSER for this year for our costs.
I'm concerned with the number of children who maybe pre-pandemic did not need assistance with their laptops. And so I'm looking for where are we paying that bill? Is there money
So that
in
money
this
would
budget?
be targeted out of the ESSER grant. There's money available that we can utilize. So there's one problem, because it's a lease program, and Jean, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that we have to be careful. We can't subsidize a lease for someone for a laptop that they then take home later with federal funding. So it's not as easy as just, am I correct with that?
Yes,
So-
we have to be careful with that. I mean, there are some, you know, the loaner programs that we've been paying out of the appropriated.
Right. So we can provide loaners with certain money, but we can't provide the subsidized lease program because we have to be careful. There's some things that we have to. So we're working through all that. There is funding available. Questioning exactly which pool of resource we're going to target for that is what we have to be careful about, though.
Okay, thank you. And my general comment is that I believe I only saw 2 additional counselors added to the list. And I will beat the drum that I have been beating, which is that I think every single staff member, as well as every single student, now has probably an ACE in their wallet that they maybe didn't have previously. And people who already had ACEs, maybe they're a little bit more, you know, jumping up and down. And so I think we have to have a mental health plan, and I don't think 2 additional counselors, especially given the infusion of the funds from other sources, I don't think 2 counselors is enough.
Are there any other questions or comments on this? Dr. McKenzie?
So
we're talking about 2 additional counselors, but what's the total?
Right. So one of the things that, and I think in one of the responses that I would have, we have added, I think, about 5 or 6 additional counselors over the past 2 years, if you look back at the increases that we've made. So we currently, and I would lean to Bethany, I think it's somewhere around 16. 16. I can prepare some of that. I can send that to you all in a follow-up, what the actual staffing of our counselors are right now. But we do have, a certain number, and we've added at least 4 or 5 that I can recall in the last 2 budgets that we've added. So, there aren't requests coming in from people in terms of what we're doing for a mental health plan. We have increased our mental health supports. We're looking at a number of different opportunities to do that through either curriculum, through our partnerships with the consortium. We're looking at a number of different ways to do that. We have not had the request come in for actual people to just add counselors, because I think you have to have a plan of what those counselors would do if they came in, and that's where we're at right now. So,
Dr. Church, can I add, the ESSER grants are in 2-year increments. So we do have the flexibility that once we get everybody back and we're into a typical routine next year, if we still see a need, we can easily do an amendment and use those funds to fund whatever it is that we need to address student need.
Thank you, Dr. Flaherty. Mr. Milady.
Thank you very much. I believe we had a meeting at some point, either July or August, we're all still remote, where we saw, I think the average caseload was for our counselors at the middle school. And I don't have that number off the top of my head, but that might be something that we can revisit in terms of looking at, if we were to get more counselors, and if that just means that we have one counselor, it increases the counselor-student ratio. I think that'd be something I would like to see.
So I do too want to reiterate what Dr. Flaherty just said. So the ESSER funding is flexible funding that we have available. We're looking at the appropriated, basically what I'm coming forward here tonight for you is a number on the appropriated budget, and whether or not we would be adding those into the appropriated budget or into the ESSER funding. So there is flexibility to add, and I think one of the things that we spend a lot of time talking about is whether or not we need to assess what the needs are. So get students back in school and do some assessment and see what we need, rather than try to predetermine what we're going to need before we have students return when we don't know what they are. So looking at ways to assess our needs and be able to adjust accordingly is sort of what we had been planning on moving forward. And I can certainly get you the information about how many staff we have and what that looks like.
Thank you. Any other members? Okay, thank you, Dr. Chorchak.
Okay. One of the things, so I have adjusted these numbers today just based upon the House 2 budget. They were a little different yesterday when we didn't have that House 2 budget. But one of the things we keep hearing about are what are incremental increases in Chapter 70. And so I thought I would bring it forward to you so that you have a good understanding about what that means and how we got it and why did we get $465,000 more in Chapter 70 funding. So we worked really hard, Jean and I, we actually reached out and had a consult with the Department of Ed to have some conversations. If you remember 2 years ago when we were talking about the Student Opportunity Act, we were all quite hopeful that a big infusion of money was going to come our way as the result of the Student Opportunity Act, when in fact in Beverly, we're at the minimum funding of Student Opportunity Act of $30 per person, right? So we worked to pull apart our Chapter 70 incremental increase to identify where the increases came from. Our increases for out of the $465,000, $244,000 of it is based upon our enrollment increase. And if you remember, one of the increases that we're seeing this year is when we transitioned from half-day kindergarten to full-day kindergarten. We anticipated an increase in enrollment. This is the year that hit, and that money is included in here. The After Dark program is specifically designated within that incremental increase. $97,000 of that money is for the After Dark program, which we turn over to Essex Tech. And the Student Opportunity Act for us in Beverly is $124,311. I thought that was an important piece of information. I also sort of wanted to just give you some historical background on Chapter 70 because there's so much conversation about it and so much discussion. And we know that in Beverly, we've had a couple of years where we got some money and then we got some more money and then we got some more money, and it seemed to be coming in dribs and drabs and never really knowing why we were getting more. And so Jean and I did a sort of an assessment of, first of all, the enrollment from FY19 to FY22, and you can see our increases in enrollment of from 4398 to 4458 to 4570 to where we are now at 4613. That's our estimated number for FY22. You can see the estimated, the increases in funding that we received. In FY19, we received $8,135,812. That increased and we saw our largest increase in Chapter 70 funding between FY19 and FY20. And I believe that's largely due to the shifting of the formula that was being used. A lot of incremental increases were given to student groups and student populations. And so that revision netted us of $1,121, so we increased to $9,257,000. In FY21, we increased another $867,000. If you look over in the column on increase in enrollment, you can see that there was a large increase in enrollment that year. And by the way, we're still only claiming half-day kindergarten in that year. And we were at $10,125,430, and our estimated increase this year is $465,000. That's only with 43 students, but I want to remind you that we have 101 students who are homeschooled this year for the first time and are planning on returning. That significantly kind of impacts that. We would have had an increase of 144 if they had all counted. And our Chapter 70 funding is $10,590,914. That's the number that Representative Paracella represented to us tonight. So that's just, I thought it would be helpful to just have some idea and understanding of what this Chapter 70 money that keeps coming, and we never know where it comes from. So any questions?
I'll call myself. In prior years, we've had discussions about liaising with real estate agents to understand the changeover in our housing stocks. I know anecdotally in my neighborhood, I've seen a lot of people downsizing and selling their houses to families with multiple children. And I think I'm also hyper aware of all the building that's been going on Rantoul Street and the types of families or, others that are moving in. I wonder if it might be a good exercise to look at some more projections based on our conversation that we just had about school choice and looking at some of these numbers and recognizing that there's the 100 shadow kids that went to homeschooling during the pandemic that will be returning, and also looking at our class sizes are no longer 300s, we're approaching 400s.
Yeah.
So maybe we can take that
I think
up.
that's an interesting thing to look at. We have done that in previous years, and looking. I know that in a few years ago, Dr. Hershey looked specifically at particular areas that we thought were going to increase. Those weren't increasing the way they were. Typically, what we're seeing and what we're experiencing in the schools is the largest increases is in Ryleside. We've had a pretty big growth in Ryleside with the turnover of the single-family homes. And likewise in North Beverly, we have an increase in North Beverly and even our Centerville. And I would say in Centerville, there might be families who are coming back from private schools. Those are all targets that are really hard to project in the typical way we would look at enrollment projections. But certainly, we can take a look at what is available to us, and I'm not sure.
I think the real estate agents have like an early glimpse of who's coming, and maybe we can get some good information there. But okay, thank you. Any other questions, Ms. Visnik?
I'm going to pile on to your comment, Ms. Abel, and say that in May of 22, we get our first phase of Anchor Point. And so, I think that it would be great if we revisited the Aaron Clausen generated estimates of the transit-oriented housing in conjunction with Harbor Anchor Point. And I understand that they're all estimates, but I think that it's a useful exercise. And so, Dr. Chirochek, when you mentioned that Dr. Hershey looked at a whole bunch of different things, you know, he and I spent a good amount of time together on that big whiteboard wall, you know, trying to estimate both numbers and where were the empty rooms, and right. So I think that's a very worthwhile thing that we should do again.
Mayor Cahill.
I third that.
I think we'll get a seventh if we go around the room.
And I guess I just want to say, I think what we'll find on the transit-oriented housing downtown is that since it's generally, well, it's specifically all 1 and 2 bedroom, and we tend to see younger professionals and empty nesters. Not that there is no one who ever has a child who lives in those buildings, in those homes, but the numbers tend to be well below what you would see in a single family, and they don't really have any type of appreciable impact. But I think when you mentioned that Aaron, our former planner, did that, he did it in partnership with the schools, because the schools have all the data. So we were able to pull that by those addresses. And then you're right, it's projecting with Anchor Point until they know who's moving in. But we can try to get those projections for sure together, yeah. And it'll be exciting. I mean, you know, yes, more numbers, but
So I did bring this forward largely to show you, because I do know that we have had a lot of conversations around Chapter 70 funding, and for me, it was an exercise in really trying to peel back what impacted those increases as they came in, and they did come in dribs and drabs, if you remember, and then it was always, you know, in the back end trying to, what are we going to spend it on, because it came in late, and so hopefully, but I agree as well. I think one of the phenomenons that we're seeing is, you know, we moved our 5th graders to the middle school. It's a good thing, because wouldn't have been room for them at the elementaries, right? Those elementary schools are filling up as quickly as we emptied them. So there's not, like we anticipated, I think originally when we thought we were moving 5th grade, that we were going to have this surplus of space at the elementaries. And, you know, they're pretty full. There's not a lot of empty rooms. There's a couple, you know, we're not like we were before we moved 5th grade out, but that's just something I think it would be great data to have. So I would look forward to doing that.
Follow on, Ms. Visnik?
I knew the lights were going down.
In the sheet that we have that you sent to us, I can talk in the dark.
I do better in the dark.
Almost one of the very last lines is the RLA 1-year positions, -14.
Yes.
So, and then an amount. That is not the totality of this year's RLA teachers, but rather those are the ones who won't be renewed.
Nope. I will let Jean speak to that. Oh, Jean's being our light person. What that was basically, Jean did took a very close look at the number of positions that we had on CVRF. If you remember, we had a CVRF grant that we put a number of positions on, and so she looked at what we utilized appropriated versus what we utilized on the grant, and we were so it had to do, it's an actual decrease in the appropriated that we can apply, so that we didn't want to leave something in there that we weren't using. You don't want to just keep adding to a budget without pulling out things that are no longer going to be there. So in this budget year, we utilize those funds, and she's deducting them out to make sure that we're not overestimating what we need. And the number of positions as well. That's looking at health insurance for the number of those positions. That's not salaries.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Did that make sense now?
Okay, sure. Yes.
Okay.
No.
Jean will talk to Jean offline on that one. It certainly, she went through the budget. She made sure, we wanted to be sure that we were not asking for money that we wanted to take the deductions out when we don't need them.
Right.
So that
and
we're
I
balancing
appreciate that. I guess what is striking is that number, and I know that a certain number of our teachers chose to go teach in RLA this year because they were not comfortable teaching in person. And so I guess when I see that number, it makes me think, for any given teacher that went and taught that was already our teacher and went and taught RLA, is their job still here?
Everybody
Do they get
has-
to come
yes.
back?
Yep. They are all set. When we created the Remote Learning Academy, so that's the difference too between a virtual school, when I talked earlier, the RLA is sort of just a 1-year gap that we put together, and we didn't create a school. What the difference that they're talking about is creating an actual school. These positions there was a lot of movement that Jean had to do because some of the teachers that went in taught in the Remote Learning Academy were at the top of the scale, and the replacements were not, and so she was balancing and budgeting. She's back now, so do you want to speak
Yeah,
to that?
so I'm sorry, I was trying to get.
The question is
show you.
about in the line on the orange sheet, about the decrease of 14 positions.
Yeah, so, so what it is we had, some,
She's got one right there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
is that we're able to put in some of the Remote Learning Academy teachers on our appropriated budget that we're not going to need for next year. So that's what that decrease is. So that's money that we received in this year that we use for Remote Learning Academy that we can use someplace else.
Mayor Cahill.
Thank you.
If everybody gets it,
You need okay.
no, I'm good.
I have, so this is just a summary. So here's where we sit right now. That was the FY21. City contribution last year was $53,160,375. Our Chapter 70 was $10,125,430. Our FY21 final budget appropriation for the year was $63,285,805. Right now, where we sit with the department requests that I just outlined for you, that we would be assigning to appropriated, that number would be at 55,585,493. We know that our Chapter 70 money coming in is 10,599,14. Where right now, with the requests that we have, we would be sitting at a draft budget of 66,176,407. So I'm going to actually ask Bryant to come up. He wanted to speak a little bit, but as he does, I just want to share with all of you that we have a lot of funding coming our way in our ESSER grants. The reason that this budget looks the way that it does right now is because I have to be careful, and I've spent a long time talking with Bryant, so he's well aware of where I'm coming from on this. I just want to be sure that as we go, we know what our true costs of what the school year would be without the stimulus money before we move any money off into other funding sources, so that we're not leaving ourselves with a delta or a cliff somewhere down the line. So this is where we sit right now. I asked Brian if he could join us. He wanted to share some information, just sort of the regular city information that he typically gets to share with all of you. So I'm going to turn it over to Brian.
Thank you. I'll try to be really brief here. I just wanted to highlight a few of the things we're dealing with at the city level when we're enthralled in the same process you guys are going through here, and trying to balance the city budget, the school being a major part of it. So Mayor Cahill and I have been undertaking meeting after meeting after meeting to try to get our arms around everything that we're facing for FY22. So to start with the revenues, you should know that we're thankfully in a much better position than we thought we were in at this point last year. And so as a result, we have a number of expected revenue increases that we can rely on reasonably going into FY22, many of which are areas that were brought down for FY21 to arrive at a balanced budget, and now we're able to kind of rebound from that level and bring them back up to a reasonable place. And a lot of these numbers are very similar to the numbers that were dealt with at the Financial Forecast Committee, for those of you that attended that or maybe reported back to this body on that work. Building permits, 350,000 we think will increase. Meals and room tax will rebound about 225,000. And these are all preliminary, by the way, and are changing, as we go through the process further and further. These numbers will get refined. State aid, these are the governor's numbers that I am showing here. So you would see that 487 go up by another, was it 90 that it went up in the House version? So that would go up another 90 to about 570 and some change. Motor vehicle excise tax, we can increase that by about 300,000. And then the biggest chunk of increase has to do with property tax. 80% of our revenue comes from property taxes. And so with everything, including the 2.5% property tax levy limit increase, as well as projected new growth figures and budgeting for an overlay reserve, that's about 3.3 million in additional revenue that will come in. And then, believe it or not, we had some other revenue sources that are actually going to decline. So all the other categories combined are about $250,000 to $350,000 in reductions. And the two major components of that have to do with the Medicaid reimbursement that we receive from, Gene knows this very well, but that has been declining and just kind of fell off a cliff last year. And so we're adjusting the budget to account for that. And then the second piece that's a major contributor is our reliance on parking meter revenue and parking enforcement revenue. We've been in a pandemic. There hasn't been as much parking downtown. So we didn't take in as much revenue as we would typically last year. Therefore, that money goes into next year's budget as kind of a transfer. So we won't be able to access as much money in the coming year from that source. So overall, you're looking at a roughly 4.3 to 4.4 with the House Ways and Means numbers, probably closer to 4.5 in new money for next year. That percentage is about a 3.1% increase year over year in revenue sources. If there are no questions with this slide, I can move on to the next.
Just want to make sure with the state aid, you're combining the unrestricted general government and the Chapter 70 in one line?
Yeah, and the reason I do that is because when we're having discussions, it's all one bucket, right? I mean, I know we parse it out and we talk about Chapter 70 in general, unrestricted aid and library aid and veterans aid, and these are all monies that come into the city, but ultimately they go into one bucket to get appropriated out by the city council through the mayor's budget request. So, yes, it's everything. You want to?
Oh, I'm sorry.
To the
Forgot I
next
was
one,
Anna.
please. Thank you. So we know right off the bat that we have a couple of areas that are going to require some additional funds in the coming year budget, and those are at the top here. Our debt payments will be increasing by $1.2 million next year. We brought on the final debt payment for this building we're in right now and the police station debt. This was always known and planned. It's actually a bit less than we actually had anticipated due to our good bond rating and good interest rates. We locked in a much more favorable rate than we were carrying in our debt schedules, which is a good thing, but it's still a $1.2 million increase over FY21 expenditures. The next one is a bit of a wild card. However, we do know that the sanitation contract for the citywide trash collection and recycling services is up at the end of this year. We're currently engaged in talks and negotiations with our hauler, but the landscape around municipal waste is entirely different than it was 5 years ago when we locked into the contract we were in for FY21. Recycling materials are now demanding costs to dispose of them, whereas before there was no cost to dispose of them because there was a marketability of those goods, and we would sell those goods to offset the collection cost. That's no longer the case, and the incineration costs for solid waste has gone up significantly since the last time we negotiated a contract. Overall, we're estimating at this point about a $600,000 increase year over year. Pension cost, we are obligated to maintain a certain level of payments, and that will increase by $339,000. And then state assessments, which is part of the cherry sheets, which is part of the local aid package that we referenced on the previous slide, is going up by $42,000. So that's $2.15 million right there of the new money that is off the table because they're kind of like you alluded to, contractual obligations. We got to pay them. So that leaves about 2.25 to 2.5 now with the new House Ways and Means numbers, million remaining. And then that brings me to my next slide, which is everything else we got to fund with what's left, right? So unfortunately, there's a number of things we still haven't even talked about that need to fit into this puzzle. Healthcare, for each 1% premium that goes up, It's about $190,000. Now, that's both between the city side and the school side. So just to give you a concept of what that entails, we haven't even looked at any of, well, we're looking at them internally, but we need to be able to address needs within all departments, including the schools. And Dr. Chirochik just showed a slide that had a delta between FY21 and FY22 of, what was it, about 2.9 in increased money?
2.4. About 2.4.
When you subtract out the expected Chapter 7.
Yeah.
It left about 2.4.
Right.
Well, I've included the total revenue in my numbers here, so it's really, the 2.9 would need to fit into this number. The whole increase would need to fit into this number. So right there, we're out of balance. And then roads and sidewalks. FY21, we brought that down to a considerably low level to balance the budget. And we need to begin to bring that back to a level where we can sustain our infrastructure throughout the city. And then we haven't addressed yet collective bargaining or salary adjustments for city employees. So I know Dr. Chirochik's slides had some assumptions built in there. You should know that for every 1% in a salary adjustment, it's about $250,000 on the city side. So that's actually my last slide. I just wanted to give you a sense of everything we're trying to put together and leave you with a little analogy. The pandemic has given one good thing in my household. We've all learned the Rubik's Cube. And so we're all getting really good at, you know, we have competitions who can solve it the quickest. And I haven't yet solved this puzzle, but that's our work over the next month to 2 months collectively. So.
And thank you, Mr. Ailes, for mentioning the financial forecasting. A couple of us were sitting on that committee, and we did meet and voted to amend the report from December 15th. So there's a new report that should be forthcoming, and I will forward that to all committee members once we've received it from Mr. Perry.
All right.
Questions for Mr. Ailes? Thank you so much, and thank you for your patience.
So again, this is just where we are in the legislative process. You know, the governor's budget, originally, this one, oh, sorry, I didn't catch up with this one. That should say 480, whatever the number is. And the governor's budget and then the incremental increase to the House Ways and Means budget, which is now, oh yeah, so the incremental increase in the governor's budget was 36. It's gone up now a little bit. It's at 10,590,000. That's the Chapter 70 money that we have coming. So that's sort of the information that we have. I guess I want to keep reiterating, you know, the items that I put in the appropriated, that doesn't mean that we couldn't have items that we could look at other funding sources for, but we just need to be cognizant that if we do that, which we could do that this year if it were necessary, we need to watch that number where we are so that we're not off kilter in future years.
So Dr. Chorchak, I believe it's my understanding that we as a committee would need to be prepared to hear your recommendations at our April 28th meeting and be prepared to vote on a budget because we need to publish it to go forward for our public hearing. So it's
You vote before the public hearing?
Well, on what you put forward.
Oh, you're going to vote whether you want us to use that for the
Put
public
that forward.
hearing. But it's not the official
and then
vote for
after,
all right.
yeah, and then after we vote. But, so obviously it's a late hour tonight, and I assume that you'd entertain questions from the committee between now and our meeting for the 28th, so you can bring information to us on the 28th. So if you do have those questions, please do send them along to Dr. Chorchak.
And again, know that Mayor and Bryant and Jean and I will be meeting again to talk and find out, you know, what other things that we can, you know, work on together to try to figure out, because it is kind of a puzzle as to how we'll do it. And so.
Okay, thank you. No questions right at this moment. Why don't we, any more slides?
I'm done.
Okay. I don't like to do this to our committee reports. We missed February and now March for our CISL, and there's been so much good information going on. Mr. Milady, could you give us a brief report? And we always have BevCam to refer back to as well.
I'll be very brief, and I think not to insult the good people at BMS, but I'll focus on the part of the CISL meeting that was our district improvement goals, if that's okay. So I printed off the slides that Dr. Chorchak presented. And I'm stealing your thunder, but I feel like you spoke enough, so that's okay. So our focus areas for a district for 2021-2022. are to be a culturally responsive teaching, as well as social emotional learning, curriculum review and selection, advanced coursework, hiring practices, and recruiting and succession. And then we have our 4 district goals. Goal 1 was presented, engage learning, inclusive practices. Goal 2 was rigorous and consistent curriculum. Goal 3, which is upside down, is instructional design, and Goal 4 is operations and management. And all of these will be available for the public. Getting
They're
some
on the
nods on the district website. And then finally, I'll make it very brief. Our PD day on March 12th, we saw some of the survey results from the staff, and I think it just seems there was an overwhelming sense of optimism and excitement to keep that going. And we also got some swag from our district. This is presented at the PD day on March 12th. And that is the briefest report you'll get from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mulady. From the negotiating subcommittee, as Dr. Thank you, Mr. Mulady. And from the negotiating subcommittee, as Dr. Chorocek reported out on May 6th, the negotiating subcommittee will sit through some interest-based bargaining training with our Unit A, B, and C members. As you remember, we entered into a one-year contract with those units, and we look forward to that opportunity. I also wanted to report out that from the agreements, the memorandums of understanding or memorandums of agreement, we are translating that into actually editing the collective bargaining agreements, the actual contracts with each of the groups, and we have turned over to our ASME units the 3 contracts. We went through a couple rounds of reviews. It's a little difficult in the remote setting to get that settled, but we will anticipate signing those actual collective bargaining agreements soon. And we're entering the same exercise with our one-year contracts, but obviously we're also looking forward to our 3-year contracts as well with our units A, B, and C. Communications from school committee members. Does someone want to go first? I have a few. I'll report out real quickly that a number of civics students in 8th grade may be reaching out to individuals on this committee to further their studies in a topic that they've selected. I know I've received inquiries from a number of students about our policies, about our decisions, about how to go about getting resolutions in front of us, and I look forward to perhaps entertaining some of those resolutions. It seems like there's some really solid work going on in our 8th grade. I had some parents asking more about bus transportation. I thank Dr. Chorocek for explaining how that's working this year and our reduced capacity. And also, I've had a parent outreach just looking for some better coordinated support for parents who are encountering challenges and just navigating different IEP processes. So definitely referred that to Dr. Chorocek's office and Miss Bethany Splansky. I think that's roughly it. Ms. Visnik.
I too am the lucky recipient of some civics projects. It's really some really cool stuff, and I punted one of them over to Dr. Chorocek and the mayor. I think a lot of what I heard from people I asked in the course of the meeting tonight, including an increase in quarantines, some questions about that, questions about lunch here at the middle school. My favorite constituent, Mr. Taylor, on reopening the high school, and we had a good conversation about that this evening. A wild question on what's the return on investment of getting a master's of education. So Jean helped me out with that. And some renewed conversations around the shared tables. And so at some point in time, maybe, Jean, we can revisit the policy that you were building a long time ago. And see if we can't get that into place. So, thank you.
Any other members that want to report out communications? Ms. Robinson.
Just some concern from middle school parents about the possibility of having to quarantine and how the students will make up work if they're not able to go into a classroom remotely.
Thank you. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Visnik. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. It's not debatable. All those in favor? 7-0. It is 10:22. we have some lights out to the parking lot. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, BevCam.